Hi, it's Mr. Beats. Thanks for being here. And I see a few hundred people showed up. So that's exciting. So tonight, well, it might be morning where you are or afternoon, but it's night where I am here, Sunday night, May Day. Uh, we are going to kind of go through this process together. You're going to all see where I stand on political issues. So I'm going to take a total of 6 different political tests that are commonly taken online. I I've had my students in the classroom teaching American government actually do a similar exercise. The two that I usually go to for my students, or I used to when I was in the classroom, are ISideWith and the political typology quiz that's put together by Pew Research. But tonight I'm going to try some additional ones. So I will be taking those two as well as the good old political compass, as well as the 9 axes. I finally said that word right. And 8 values, which I hear is one of the better ones. And then another one called 10 groups, which was brought to my attention on Twitter. Speaking of Twitter, many of you, I actually tweeted out I was going to do this, and I asked for suggestions for different political tests to take online. And holy crap, there are a lot of political quizzes now online. So there were so many suggestions that I will not get to because we just won't have enough time. I don't want to be longer than a couple hours for this. So, and I also don't want to bore you. So I've been inspired to do this for a long time. I teach social studies, and so it's not a hard science. So there's a lot of subjective perspectives, perception, I guess, of evidence, of history, of things that are ambiguous. There's nuance. There's room for interpretation. Okay, so it's unlike physics, for example, or mathematics, where it's more cut and dry. And because of that, teaching social studies, I think, can be rather difficult. It's difficult to be neutral, to try to consider all perspectives and viewpoints, and just really in general, like, make it so that you are trying to give everybody the opportunity to have a voice. We all have our biases. I want to start off by saying that I'm biased. Of course, I put that in the description. And you watching this are too. No one is not biased. If someone ever claims that I am not biased, just say, Mr. Beat himself said, I am biased. So with that in mind, I think it is important that you know kind of where I come from. And you're probably going to find that my views don't really fit neatly into a category. That's why I often kind of get lumped into this centrist category, which is mostly meaningless. I think technically almost everyone is a centrist if you look at specific axes. I already got some super chats. Okay, well, I'll put these up, but I'm going to try to Emperor Tiger Star. Oh, all right. Yeah, for political compass. Okay. I think him and I have very similar political views. I haven't seen JJ's 35 Tribes video. Actually, JJ McCullough is partially what inspired me to do this, because a few weeks ago, maybe it was a few months ago at this point now, but he released a video just straight up giving his political beliefs, and he tried to summarize them as best as he could. And he kind of gave his rationale, and it really pushed me to finally do this, because I've been meaning to do this for a very long time. A lot of you who have watched me for a long time, you already kind of know where I stand, but it does depend on the issue. I would say there are certain issues where I do lean more to the right end of the political spectrum, and there's other issues where I lean to the left end. But even even that's problematic to say right wing or left wing. Whenever I hear someone say the right with a capital R or the left with a capital L, it's just not productive language to use. All it's doing is, making us more tribalistic. I actually released a video about political ideologies. I'm gonna start not political ideologies, but actually that's in the future. That's a future video. Political spectrums. I'm gonna start sharing my screen here to. I wanted to share some videos I've made to bring your attention to before we get started. So let me do that now. All right, so here, I don't like that. Let's do a better. That's a little better. Okay. Yeah, so first of all, I'm going to be taking the political compass test, and many of you already know that I've already taken the political compass test before for myself, but it's been a few years since I've done it for myself. But for a video specifically that I made about a year and a half ago, I took the political compass test. It was over 2,000 times, I think, if I counted correctly. I just went through every not the test 2,000 times. I'm sorry, 2,000 questions that I answered. Gosh, if I took it 2,000 times, that would take my entire life. But no, I answered probably over 2,000 questions for that in total. But what I did was I pretended like I was every president in American history, and I tried to do the best I could. It was just a fun exercise. I also, up there, you see my political spectrums explain video. And, the fact that we call politicians or just anybody in general, like left wing or right wing, I think is also problematic and oversimplified and does more harm than good. And I think we should, I hope you learned tonight that we should be looking at where we stand on political spectrums per issue or per, we can be a little bit more broad than issue, but maybe like a set of ideals, maybe. I'll show you examples. That will make more sense when we. Thank you, Silas, for that. I appreciate that. All right, yeah, got to see if J-Reg's going to be watching too, because I'm often a dirty centrist. The United States of America, the band. Well, America's a great band. Okay, let's go ahead and. There's also another video I wanted to share with you, and that is it's a video I made actually further back, probably at this point like 4 years ago, and it's about why we get so angry when we discuss politics. And why won't you listen to my political? Why do we get so angry over politics? And so this was something that I made, after years and years of having very heated discussions with family members, especially. And I am passionate sometimes when it comes to certain issues like healthcare. If you follow me on Twitter, I'm really passionate about that. But I think just to summarize that video so you don't have to watch it, my whole point of that video is when you are attacking someone's position on politics, whatever it is, the reason why we get so angry is it's like you're attacking their identity. So you're attacking who they are as a person. That is at the root of why we get so angry. But also, especially if it's in the same family, because parents, especially, they raise their kids to be a certain way. They instill values in them, like my parents did with me. And I would argue that the vast majority of values they have, I also have. But there are different interpretations of how to carry out those values. And so that's where you have issues. And so when you do have family disagreements when it comes to politics and also religion, identity is a key factor because the parents often feel like they have lost who you are. Like it's like you've become a different person because your political beliefs are so intertwined with your identity. And so that's something to remember about why we get so angry when it comes to talking about politics. Now, most of you probably don't so much because you're political junkies like me. And thank you, Angel. But you, oh, I think Silas actually had a question. Furry persona would I be? Probably Sonic the Hedgehog. All right. Okay. So I think James, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and start with the political compass. And I hope that you learn a lot about your political beliefs as we go through this together. And I'm doing this live. So if you're watching this in the future, I'm leaving it up for posterity's sake, but I'm doing this live so you kind of see, like, I've never taken all, like, the only political tests that I've taken are the political compass, which again, it was years ago, political typology quiz, again, years ago, and ISideWith, which I did, I think, last year. So my political beliefs are always changing, as they should be. They've changed a lot, even in the last, I would say, 3 or 4 years. So I'm constantly evolving. But this is where I stand right now on May 1st, 2022. So I'll show you the process together, and let's just jump right into it, as Philip DeFranco says. All right, we're going to start with the political compass, and this is kind of, the meme. Essentially, it's a meme at this point. So the political compass. Wow, it's been around 21 years now. All right, you know all about it. We're just going to go right into it. So we're going to take the test, and I'll explain where I stand on certain issues. Is that big enough? Let's see if this is going to be big enough for you. I'm going to zoom in. Yeah, I think that's big enough for you. Maybe a little more. Okay. So it says right here, before taking the test, please note that this isn't a survey and these aren't questions, they're propositions. To question the logic of individual ones that irritate you is to miss the point. Some propositions are extreme and some are moderate. Well, that's subjective, isn't it? Right? That's how we can show you whether you lean toward extremism or moderation on the compass. Your responses should not be overthought. Some of them are intentionally vague. Their purpose is to trigger reactions in the mind, measuring feelings and prejudices that, rather than detailed opinions about or on policy. So the political compass has been heavily criticized for good reason. There's lots of problems with it. We're just taking it for the fun of it and as a starting point, because there are better political tests to take. So I encourage you to explore other ones. After we're done with this, you'll see examples. All right, so just a few propositions to start with concerning, no less, how you see the country and the world. If economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. All right, so it's a classic spectrum between, individual human rights versus the rights of corporations, which, according to the United States Supreme Court, corporations do have the same legal rights as humans do, at least in certain contexts. So, but yeah, transnational is also an emphasis here. So I think this is very vague, as it said it would be, but I would argue that you want to probably your gut would, well, not your gut, but your heart would be leaning towards humanity. But there's also the argument that there's they can coexist. So, but I'm going to say agree. It should primarily serve humanity. All right. I'd always support my country, whether it was right or wrong. I would say strongly disagree on this one. Yeah, like what if you were living in Nazi Germany in 1942? That's probably something you should not support. What was going on there in 1942 or the years after, before, right before then. Okay, no one chooses their country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it. I think a lot of you already know where I stand on nationalism. There's a big distinction between patriotism and nationalism, which I made a video about. But I think this is not just the case with where you were born, but also your physical characteristics. Like, imagine being born and being so proud of that mole on your back. I have a few moles on my back, by the way. But yeah, like, how kind of absurd is that? So yeah, I do think it's foolish to be proud of it. I'm not going to put strongly agree though, because I think I understand, like, ties to the group. We're social creatures. It's pretty ingrained in us, at least evolutionary speaking, as far as like how tribalistic we are. So I'll just put agree on that. Our race has many superior qualities compared with other races. So this is something that's a loaded statement, because it's making the assumption that like there's different races when this is not based in biology. So I don't even know how to answer this one. I've always hated this one. But our race has many superior qualities compared with. So I'm just going to say strongly disagree, based on really the premise of it. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. I'm going to say it's more complicated than that, so disagree. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. This is definitely one that can get very complicated. My gut goes to disagree, because international law is there for good reason, in the name of world peace. However, what if you have a situation where someone, their life is in danger, and in order to save it, you technically are breaking an international law. So I don't want to be too absolutist on this. So I probably would say agree for that reason. There is now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. Wow, that hits home. That kind of hits a little too close to home. I would say that I'm not too worried about this like other people are. Like, the bottom line is we need to be teaching critical thinking at a young age, like as young as elementary school. And so as long as people are capable of critical thinking, then this shouldn't matter. But that's under that assumption. I know a lot of people are not taught how to critically think or to question or even allowed to be curious growing up. They're just taught how things are, no ifs, ands, or buts. So I think, living in the world we do, I have to be realistic with this one. And so, yeah, I am a little worried about this. All right. Page 2. Now the economy. We're talking attitudes here, not the FTSE index. Okay. People are ultimately divided more by class than by nationality. I would say, perception is we are divided by nationality. As far as like reality, class definitely. It's the problem is the people in power typically are really good about tricking everyone who's not in power to hate each other. But I think if this question really means like what's really going on, you know, I don't know. It's kind of hard to. I don't know. You could take it either way. So I'm just going to put agree because you can interpret that different ways. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. This is a classic debate that economists have. It's a very important debate to have. It's one we're currently dealing with throughout most of the world. Inflation currently is a big problem. But unemployment is, focusing in on the United States, unemployment is really low right now. But to me, I think it's more important to control inflation because that's the hidden tax. That is something that um, wages a lot of times can't keep up with, and so people, especially people at the bottom of the hierarchy, at the bottom of the lower class, for lack of a better way to put it. So yeah, I would agree with that. You notice how I'm not putting a lot of strongly disagree or strongly agree. I think that's mostly that reflects how I'm not very ideological. I used to be when I was younger, and I think most of you watching when you're younger, and some of you maybe are like 13 watching this right now. You're probably, if you're a 13-year-old watching this right now, you are probably really ideological. But you'll grow out of that, hopefully. I'm much more pragmatic than I used to be, and I try to raise my kids to be that way and not fall for any one ideology. But okay, anyway, because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation. Well, we've seen this with evidence, so I would agree. You socialist, Mr. Beat. Okay, quote, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. So here we have a shout out to Marx. Karl Marx is a fundamentally good idea. So this is, again, a loaded term that can be interpreted so many different ways. How do I want to interpret it? Tonight, at this moment, from each according to his ability. So what everyone's able to do, but make sure everybody is able to, be taken care of. If that's my interpretation of this. Sure, but I think that if you even like try to narrow it down with what Marx was talking about, if you've read up on him, I think it's still like a complicated, nuanced mess. So I hate this one. I don't know why this is even on here. It should be gone. The freer the market, the freer the people. Generally, yeah. The problem is we haven't had free markets probably ever. So this is a bit of a utopian, kind of like this one up here is a little bit too utopian. But I would say agree. Oh, you're going to the libertarian side now. Okay. It's a sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water is now bottled, branded consumer product. Yeah. A bottled, branded consumer product. Yeah, I mean, it is, but also like it's a way to get fresh water to people, like say Flint, Michigan, for many years. In fact, they're still dealing with contaminated water. But yeah, like it's not so easy. I'm gonna go ahead and I'll say agree, but I'm hesitating on that one. Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. Yeah, so this one clearly, if you say yes or you agree, then you are leaning more towards the side of communism, or at the very least socialism, like in term like in kind of a caricature of it, I should say. Even though those terms kind of mean all kinds of different things, but I would say that this comes into the whole idea of public goods. And so if you think that there are certain times where government should step in, you could say that certain things in the land should not be bought and sold. They should be for everyone, like a national park, for example. But at the same time, yeah, like how can I go against like because this is a huge part of the reason why much of the world is wealthy right now, like in terms historically speaking anyway. When I say wealthy, I mean like in terms of material prosperity. Doesn't mean we're happier, obviously, but land should be a commodity. I mean, yeah, I think it should be, it could be, yeah. So I'll say disagree on this one. It is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to their society. So this seems to kind of be hinting at Wall Street, financial markets, especially like hedge fund managers or something like that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure, it is regrettable. Yeah, who can disagree with that? Protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade. I used to be like, if this was me 2 or 3 years ago, even, I would say, no, it's never necessary. Protectionism sucks. Okay. I generally am a free trade person. I will tell you that right now, that the freer the trade, the better. All these years of teaching economics has led me to reach that conclusion. However, to be a complete purist on this, that is ideological. And so I do think that there need to be exceptions. So this is probably the first time I'm going to put agree with this one. It feels a little dirty, but the only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver a profit to its shareholders. This is on the surface, yes, should be their main responsibility, but the only social response. I mean, the word social right there should be a big indicator that we're talking about something that goes beyond shareholders, and so we need to think about society as a whole. So I'm going to disagree on this one. The rich are too highly taxed. I think this one's more cut and dry. I'll disagree on this. And now that said, I think most of us are taxed too much. I personally am not a big fan of the income tax, especially. I think there's better ways to tax. But I am really worried about wealth inequality. Wealth inequality is a given. It's going to happen no matter what in a market system. But in terms of like extreme wealth inequality, like what we're seeing right now all over the world, it's very scary stuff. It might truly be one of the things that ends up leading to some pretty chaotic times if wealth inequality continues to spiral out of control. So yeah, I disagree with that. Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. I am for either a purely market system for healthcare, but we are so far removed from that. In fact, the closest we maybe got to that was 70, 80 years ago. We get nostalgic, libertarians get nostalgic about like, reasonable prices for a visit to the doctor, or, whatever a hospital was back then. But at the same time, there's a certain point where you have to say, hey, healthcare is not a privilege, it's a right. And so I am for universal healthcare now. I think if you follow me on Twitter, that's no surprise. But yeah, those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. If you want to get supplemental insurance on top of universal healthcare, you can. Why not? Why not? But should is the word here that stands out. Should have access to higher standards. I disagree with that. If that word should wasn't in there, instead, if you say those with the ability to pay can have access to higher standards of medical care, yeah, agree. But because that word should is in there, I disagree. So now I'm back over to the authoritarianism side. Okay, governments should penalize businesses that mislead the public. This is similar to the regulation one earlier about that harm, companies that harm the environment. I would say that this falls under the realm of false advertising. I immediately think of like those the snake oil salesmen that which today still exist in more clever ways. Like people are generally they don't generally have enough time to research adequately, and so a lot of times they are easily misled. And so, yeah, I think government should step in sometimes. A genuine free market requires restrictions on the ability of predator multinationals to create monopolies. Yeah, I mean, in order for there to be a free market, you need to have, and sometimes you do have to have regulations. You have to have restrictions on um, monopolies. I think that's something that will free the market. How can you even consider starting a business of your own if you have no capital and any way to get capital is blocked? Then where's the freedom? Where's your freedom at? So um, just really quickly, my just kind of a little tangent here. But I used to dislike Franklin Roosevelt when I was younger. And when I was in grad school, I started to read a lot of what he wrote and listen to a lot of his speeches. And it really made me rethink of him overall. Like, because I used to be really critical about the New Deal and about um, the federal government micromanaging all these things and being inefficient, wasting money, yada yada. Which, yeah, duh, that stuff happens. But also, it got to a point though where I was like focusing in on his philosophy. So there are multiple speeches by FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, where he talks about government intervention should be there only to protect freedom. In other words, you can have civil liberties sometimes when the government steps in, but really that's civil rights, right? I mean, because that's civil rights and civil liberties. I made a video about as well the difference between the two. Civil liberties is just freedom from the government, freedoms from the government. Civil rights are freedoms that you get that government needs to step in to protect. And so he was more of a civil rights guy. Okay, so he had a different way of getting there. I understand the pushback against that notion, but I think if you want freedom, it's not going to be easy to get there if you don't have a little power behind you. And sometimes that power has to come from government. So, sorry to go off on the tangent. A genuine free market requires restrictions on the ability. Yeah, agree. Yeah. All right. So we're at page 3. I better pick it up here. Now, a look at some of your personal social values. Abortion, when the woman's life is not threatened, should always be illegal. I mean, this is an issue that gets oversimplified all the time. It's made black and white all the time. There's a lot of gray here. Okay, I generally lean towards pro-life, but honestly, I think almost everyone does. You want to save whoever's life whenever possible. You want to make sure that no one has to die, especially though if the woman's life is in danger. Obviously, that's more obvious to people, but then you have a separate issue, a debate about, okay, does a fetus or does an embryo have the same rights as somebody who's out of the womb? Most people would disagree with that. So this gets to be, scientifically speaking, biologically speaking, life begins at conception, but that doesn't mean that translates to civil rights and liberties. So yeah, I used to be more of a hardliner growing up on the pro-life issue. I still think abortions are pretty horrific and should be avoided whenever possible. But should they always be illegal? No, there's other situations. So I'm going to disagree on this because there's other exceptions that I think should be there. All authority should be questioned. I think I might be ideological on this one, but yes, strongly agree. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. So this is like justice, but see, justice can be, I mean, we see how flawed the American justice system is, despite it being revered around the entire freaking world. So justice is messy and it's subjective and it's not so simple. So disagree on this one. Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theaters or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis. Okay. Music now, theaters. Theaters. I could probably see that one. Museums, though, like this is where we get to like, what is the purpose of a museum? A lot of times, the primary purpose of a museum is education, and the teacher in me is like, we need some government support for that. We need some tax support. It'd be better if it was just wealthy donors that funded all of it, but they don't always do that, do they? A lot of people forget that a big reason why the library system in the United States is so strong is because of Andrew Carnegie. He donated so much of his own fortune. Without that, a lot of small communities would not have been able to afford a library. And I do believe in public libraries. I think that they are extremely important, even today with the internet, because a lot of what they do even is provide internet access to people that can't access it. And you might be thinking, who doesn't have access to the internet right now? That kind of maybe shows you that you're living in a bubble. You need to get out of your bubble a little bit, and not everybody has that privilege. So I'm going to disagree on this one. Back to the authoritarianism. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. Yeah, I mean, in principle, I still agree with this one. I know as a teacher, that's maybe sounds weird, but yeah, I just think that it should be up to the parents, and it should be up to, when the student reaches a certain age, like 18 in particular, which in most states, by the way, I think the law is like, I'm talking about the United States. 16, I think, is the age where you're not forced to go to school anymore. It's like sometimes it's 17, I think. But all right, all people have their rights, but it is better for all of us that different sorts of people should keep to their own kind. Ooh, red flag on this one. No, like keeping to your own kind, I think, is actually, it does more harm than good. It, you want different people to be interacting. For the survival of our species, that needs to happen. So disagree on that one. Good parents sometimes have to spank their children. No, strongly disagree on this one. There's lots of studies out there to back up what I'm saying, that spanking your child does way more harm than good. It's natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents. Natural is another word that I just hate generally. I try to avoid using it. What the heck do you mean by natural? Like, I don't know. I hate this one. I guess I'll just say agree, because I just don't know. Okay. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offense. Yeah, I agree with that for sure. The prime function of schooling should be to equip the future generation to find jobs. No, I think the prime function of schooling should be to create better citizens. And that's I know that kind of like contradicts a little bit me saying that we shouldn't force kids to go to school, but we definitely should highly encourage it. And I think the byproduct of going to school, getting an education, is you will find better jobs. This is inevitably true. You can compare how much money someone earns, versus like having a bachelor's degree or associate's degree, master's degree, or just a high school diploma. The people that have degrees, post-secondary degrees, earn like well over $1 million more than people who just have a high school diploma. So I think that's a byproduct. That's a good reason why we should have schooling. But the prime function, I think, to create better citizens. People with serious inheritable disabilities should not be allowed to reproduce. That's eugenics, and I strongly disagree with that. Yeah. The most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. Disagree. I'm not going to explain that on that. That's a pretty archaic thing, actually, at this point. I'm hoping most of you realize there are no savage and civilized peoples. There are only different cultures. Yeah, I agree with that. Those who are able to work and refuse the opportunity should not expect society's support. No, we're human beings. We're there for our species, okay? If there's a lazy chimpanzee not doing their fair share, they're just sitting there like stealing bananas. I don't give a crap about the chimpanzee. If you want to get rid of that chimpanzee, I am team human being. So whoever the human being is, we should try our best to help them. Because when it comes down to it, we want our species to survive. So I'm heavily biased towards humans. Okay. I don't even think I would be that, like sympathetic to other primates that were really close to us, like that we existed at the same time with. Okay, no disrespect to other species out there, but I'm sorry. So we need to support everyone as best as we can. So disagree. Okay. When you are troubled, it's better not to think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things. If you just keep your bad thoughts in your head and you never release them, then one day you're just gonna, just like a balloon. The common metaphor here. You have too much air, too much pressure inside that balloon. Eventually, it's going to pop, and when it pops, that's when you have really, really bad things happen. So, I think you need to get it out. So, disagree with that. First generation immigrants can never be fully integrated within their new country. This is what do you mean by integrated? What do you mean by that? That can mean different things, but I would interpret this as, and I usually interpret it as, there's no way that they can fit in, like they're going to be disruptive or they're going to be breaking the law. No, I disagree with that. What's good for the most successful corporations is always ultimately good for all of us. I think often the case, this can be true. Yeah. Like I think, take Amazon as a corporation. I think the quality of life of people around the world has gone up because of Amazon. It doesn't mean that they treat their workers well. It doesn't mean that it's perfect. So this statement here, especially just saying always and ultimately, that's the problem. So that's where you have to disagree when they're using superlatives like this. No broadcasting institution, however independent its content, should receive public funding. If I was younger, I would have said agree. But as I've gotten older, working in journalism all these years, I've realized that, yeah, it's kind of nice to have like NPR or PBS around when the incentives are a little bit better. So you might have these liberal journalists in there. They went to these liberal journalism colleges, but they don't have to rely on advertising money. They can go out and report on the Russian invasion of Ukraine and not have to worry about like, oh, we got to pump out clickbaity material so people will watch or they'll read the article and then we'll get more ad revenue. They don't have to have that. They have this safety net. And I think that's important because it leads to better investigative journalism and just better, I think, more objective reporting overall. So disagree. I've changed my mind on that one over the years. And how you see the wider society. Our civil liberties are being excessively curbed in the name of counterterrorism. I agree with that one. There's probably no surprise to many of you who have followed me for a while. A significant advantage of a one-party state is that it avoids all the arguments that delay progress in a democratic political system. Okay, so are we going to go straight authoritarianism here on this one? I mean, it is an advantage. It is an advantage. Look at China. They've had progress with a one-party state. doesn't mean that it's all gravy. So I don't know. The way it words it, it says a significant advantage. I would just say an advantage. Get rid of that word significant. But I'm just going to go ahead and say agree on this one. It's going to make me more authoritarian, I know. But although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need to be worried. No, disagree. Everybody should be worried if you're being spied on. The death penalty should be an option for the most serious crimes. I am against the death penalty. And I don't want to get into the whole thing right now. Maybe it will come up more with some of these other political tests, but in a civilized society, one must always have people above to be obeyed and people below to be commanded. So this is like they're trying to get me to lean authoritarian again on this one because they want you to be pro-hierarchy. I'm very anti-hierarchy, like almost in every situation, every issue we talk about. So, and then civilized, what does that even mean? That's another term that can be interpreted in many different ways. What do you mean by that? So disagree on this one. Abstract art that I always love this one. Abstract art that doesn't represent anything shouldn't be considered art at all. That's completely subjective. And who are we to say? You know, like who are we to say? And criminal justice punishment should be more important than rehabilitation. Strongly disagree with this one. This is where I get a little bit ideological. I think especially with the drug war, I think just throwing them in prison is doing much more harm than good. We should be working to rehabilitate people. A lot of people first turn to drugs. Like the research backs this up, by the way. When I say a lot of people, I'm talking about the vast majority of drug users turn to that because they have trauma they're dealing with. It is a waste of time to try to rehabilitate some criminals. Disagree. I mean, I'll just do disagree on that one. The business person and the manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist. I mean, the writer and the artist a lot of times are inspiring the business person and the manufacturer. So I disagree with that. Mothers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers. Strongly disagree with that. Especially as me being a father myself, and like that's part of my role is to take care of the home. Multinational companies are unethically exploiting the plant genetic resources of developing countries. Unethically, like maybe this is a term that needs to be explored a little bit, but exploiting just means you're taking advantage of resources. I mean, yeah, this is if you want to expand this, obviously you can go with like all resources. Look at like, for example, cobalt in the Congo. So yeah, I'll say agree on that. Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity. Disagree. You should always be putting pressure on whatever the establishment is. I've been going much more libertarian lately. All right. If you got through that okay, you'll find these propositions on religion a breeze. Astrology accurately explains many things. Strongly disagree. It's just all made up. You cannot be moral without being religious. Strongly disagree. Charity is better than social security as a means of helping the genuinely disadvantaged. Why? I mean, if they're getting help, however we can get them help, we should. So, I mean, yeah, charity is always better than the inefficiencies of government. But I mean, the bottom line is, well, I don't know why we need to worry about this that much, I guess. Like, other than like, just help the people in any way. We use a lot of government funding for horrible things. This should be when government steps in first to help the genuinely disadvantaged. I'm just thinking about like we went to my daughter had a concert, and on our way back home there was this homeless person in the middle of the street. Didn't look like they knew where they were going. He had a stick. He was waving it over. Clearly mentally ill. This person needs help. I don't think the resources are there for this person to adequately help them. And so, is there going to be? Should I have picked him up and put him in my car, drove him home, and said, "Okay, here, I'm going to take care of you from now on"? I don't think I can handle that. So sometimes you do have to rely. So yeah. Anyway, I'm going off on another tangent on this one. That's a tough one, though. I would go back and forth on that one. Disagree and agree. Some people are naturally unlucky. There's that word "naturally" again. I think everyone's unlucky at certain points. But like in particularly unlucky, I mean, you could sure like, I wasn't born royalty. I wasn't born with rich and powerful connections. I guess I'm naturally unlucky, huh? Okay, sure. It is important that my child's school instills religious values. If they go to religious school, then I suppose that is important. But if it's a public school, there might be different religions. So you want to separate church and state. And yeah, that would be, I would disagree with that. We're almost done. Last page. Finally, a look at sex. Sex outside marriage is usually immoral. Gosh, I would say it depends on the person, doesn't it? But I think disagree though. A same-sex couple in a stable, loving relationship should not be excluded from the possibility of child adoption. Yeah. Pornography depicting consenting adults should be legal for the adult population. I agree with that. Feel free to take all this stuff out of context, by the way. What goes on in a private bedroom between consenting adults is no business of the state. Agree. No one can feel naturally. So there's that word again, naturally homosexual. Disagree. These days, openness about sex has gone too far. Where? Not in the United States. You don't see people just talking about it all like at work. I mean, so I disagree. Okay, here we go. All right. Looks like I am authoritarian left. Oh, it's because I answered that one question that was. So I'm right above. I thought it would be libertarian left is kind of what I was thinking, but not too far. I'm pretty close to the middle, so I about grilled it, as they say. All right, scroll down. Okay. Yeah, this is where the. Oh, that was mine. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Gosh, dang, it has been a long time. Okay, I am there. I'm an idiot. Okay, yeah. I'll just edit that out. So yeah, left libertarian is kind of what I predicted. Last time I took this, I was probably closer to right over here. Oh man, I'm way down there though. This is probably not surprising most people. What is with this ad I'm seeing over here? Oh my gosh. Okay. So if I compare it to the presidential one, who would be the closest president? I'm curious. Somebody in the comments. Pull up my here. I don't know if there it is. All right, so I'll share this. So this is where I am. Feel free to screenshot that. Now I'm going to show you the presidential one that I did. Yeah, this is oh yeah, so I'm way the closest one I think is either Jimmy Carter or Rutherford Hayes. Jimmy Carter and Rutherford Hayes. Yeah. Okay, so they're not two of my favorite presidents, by the way. So, okay, so we are going to take the next one. Next up is 8 values. So, I've never taken this this test before. So, but 8 values gets a lot of respect from the political junkies online. So, as it says here, 8 values is in essence a political quiz that attempts to assign percentages for 8 different political values. And I like how it words it as values versus axes, because like this shows you like, okay, ultimately when it comes down to political beliefs, it's our values, like something that are deeply ingrained in us, like since we were little. So it says you will be presented by a statement and then you will answer with your opinion on the statement from strongly agree to strongly disagree, with each answer slightly affecting your scores. At the end of the quiz, your answers will be compared to the maximum possible for each value, thus giving you a percentage. Answer honestly. All right. So you will be presented with a series of statements for each one. Click the button with your opinion on it. Okay. Oppression by corporations is more of a concern than oppression by governments. Okay. Classic debate. And I've had debates with my friends about this very thing. The difference between corporations and governments, in simplest terms, if you want to really be regressive about it, is governments have the military on their side. Okay, not historically always. I get it. The British East India Company, they had their own military. I get it. But generally, governments have the military on their side. Doesn't mean that one day we might not see a Elon Musk space force. SpaceX have their own space force. It could happen, but I'm going to disagree. Because I think oppression by governments is actually, I'm going to strongly disagree on this one. Yeah. It is necessary for the government to intervene in the economy to protect consumers. Yes, I agree. The freer the markets, the freer the people. Yes, but again, a lot of our problems today, folks, come on. Do we really have free markets? Think about this. How many corporations did not pay taxes last year? How many billionaires got bailed out over the past 2 decades in the United States alone? We don't have free markets, okay? If we had true markets, they would function much better than what we have now. We have essentially, we have corporate welfare, corporatism, whatever you want to call it. Crony capitalism is what libertarians call it. So I agree with this statement, but what we have in our society, most societies actually throughout the world, you just don't have this. So it is better to maintain a balanced budget than to ensure welfare for all citizens. See, this is a weird either or, but I kind of understand why they did it. Yeah, I think we want welfare for all citizens more than anything. And now, when you don't have a balanced budget, that could lead to perhaps inflation or other economic problems that hurt everyone. So that would end up hurting the welfare of all citizens. But I would disagree. Or maybe neutral would be better for, yeah, because I can kind of see both sides on that one. Okay. Publicly funded research is more beneficial to the people than leaving it to the market. I disagree on that because a lot of times private research is just more innovative, and we've seen that throughout American history in particular. Tariffs on international trade are important to encourage local production. I disagree. I generally don't like tariffs. From each according to his ability to each according to his needs. Here we go again. And, on the political compass test, this had it basically where you had to choose something. I'm going to go neutral on this one because I don't think this one should even be a part of this. It's too complicated. All right. It would be best if social programs were abolished in favor of private charity. Again, another similar one to the one that was on the political compass test. I'm going to say, well, I went back and forth on this one too, didn't I? So let's stay neutral. Taxes should be increased on the rich to provide for the poor. In some cases, yes, I do think that you need to, like, I am actually okay with a wealth tax. Maybe capital gains tax instead. But if you want to learn all about the different types of taxes, I have a video about that as well. But I would say agree. Inheritance is a legitimate form of wealth. I mean, yeah, it is kind of sad because a lot of wealth is inherited in the world, and we're getting ready to see a huge transfer of wealth with the wealthiest generation right now, the baby boomers, are going to pass that off to their kids, millennials, and you're going to see extreme wealth inequality get even worse. Doesn't mean that it's not legitimate, though. So, basic utilities like roads and electricity should be publicly owned. I think that's reasonable. There are things that everybody use. So yeah, here we go. Now that's socialism. Socialism, huh? Government intervention is a threat to the economy. Government intervention is, so like if the government intervenes in an economy, I would say this is too absolutist. I would say that often it is a threat to the economy, but I would say there's certain things they can do that are a great investment to an economy. So I'll go neutral here. Those with a greater ability to pay should receive better health care. Oh, this is the same exact one from the political compass. All right. So yeah, what did I say on that one? So because of the way it was worded, though, was it worded the exact same way? If they have a greater ability to pay, should. That was the word that was the problem. Should. So disagree with that. Quality education is a right of all people. Is education a right? I think education is a right. Some of you probably disagree with that. The means of production should belong to the workers who use them. This is socialism. So, by the way, I do have a video explaining the difference between communism, socialism, and capitalism. Mr. Terry reacted to it recently. He did a wonderful job. There's something I didn't bring up in that video that I should have with regards to socialism, and that is the difference between personal property and private property. Personal property would still be allowed. You could still have your own personal belongings. Private property abolished in terms of like capital goods and services to produce. But yeah, like when we talk about the means of production should belong to the workers who use them at the local, like in terms of just one factory, if this is actually at the local level, then sure, I think I'm okay with this. Honestly, this is a much better system. So, I think it's a little too broad of a statement. So I'm between neutral and agree, but because I don't want it to label me a straight up socialist, I'm going to put neutral. The United Nations should be abolished. No, disagree with that. I'm a fan of the United Nations. I think it's been a net positive. Military action by our nation is often necessary to protect it. Of course. Yeah, I should have probably put strongly agree on that one. I support regional unions such as the European Union. If they promote free trade, which is the idea, one of the main ideas behind the European Union, then yes, I agree. It is important to maintain our national sovereignty. Oh, of course, yeah. A united world government would be beneficial to mankind. Here's where we get into the Alex Jones talk, like, they want the new world order, the one world government, the globalists. Okay, so we need to be careful with this one. I understand why people kind of freak out when they see this united world government, because you want kind of you want a balance of power. You don't want one entity having too much power. So I think centralized power in general is probably a bad idea. However, I think the United Nations is kind of a good compromise with that. So a coalition. Um, so yeah, I think I disagree on this one. It is more important to retain peaceful relations than to further our strength. I agree. Wars do not need to be justified to other countries. Okay, like Russia going to war with Ukraine, invading Ukraine, trying to take over parts of Ukraine. So this is saying they don't need to justify that to other countries. Okay. I mean, are wars ever justified other than it uh, when it's self-defense? So I don't know. That's a weird one. I'm going to put neutral on that one because I don't. Military spending is a waste of money. Certainly, it often is. Most of the time, it is. If you look at the military spending in the United States alone, it is incredibly wasteful. Talk about inefficient spending. Yeah. So, but just overall, total. I mean, it's important. It's still important. So I would disagree with it. International aid is a waste of money. I would disagree as well because oftentimes that's how you build up diplomacy and good relations with other countries. My nation is great. I think we're talking about the United States, like when we say nation, I'm assuming country. So I'll say agree. Research should be conducted on an international scale. So, like, I'm assuming they mean people in different countries working together. Sure. Governments should be accountable to the international community. Well, yeah. I mean, we should all be accountable. All governments should be accountable to each other if you think about it like that. Like, again, back to the United Nations, the purpose of it. Agree. Even when protesting an authoritarian government, violence is not acceptable. I agree with that. There's going to be extreme circumstances, though. Always, there's going to be a situation where you have to consider self-defense. So, in my opinion, violence is only acceptable in self-defense. Like you kill to save a life or lives. So this is where it gets a little. There's gray area. So I will put neutral. My religious values should be spread as much as possible. But how do you spread them? That's where it gets kind of. I mean, I have no problem with people spreading their religious values. A lot of times, especially if they're human values that are more universal. So neutral on that. Our nation's values should be spread as much as possible. Manifest destiny. That was a big driving force throughout the 1800s? Spread the ideals of the Constitution to as many people across the continent as possible. Expand, and you're expanding not only territory but our ideals, our values. The problem with this one is values are different in different places. Generally, though, most people have the same values. Don't get me wrong. I think if you look at the implications of this, it's problematic. But I think as long as it's peaceful, then I'm okay with spreading values. So yeah, neutral. It is. I'm very glad, by the way, for this neutral unsure button on here. And I know it's sometimes a cop out, but when you think about some of these statements being so oversimplified, it's nice to have that. So thank you, 8 values, for that. It is very important to maintain law and order. I agree with that. Most people would agree. The general populace makes poor decisions. I disagree with that. Physician-assisted suicide should be legal. Okay, this is another tough one. I think this is something that can get abused easily. and you have to be careful with it. So as long as it's heavily regulated, then I think it should be. The sacrifice of some civil liberties is necessary to protect us from acts of terrorism. Wow, strongly disagree on that one. Government surveillance is necessary in the modern world. Disagree with that. The very existence of the state is a threat to our liberty. No, I disagree with that. Regardless of political opinions, it is important to side with your country. You don't always have to side with your country. I don't always side with the United States government. And when we say your country, there's always people within your country that disagree with you. Almost always, right? Unless, maybe North Korea. No, even in North Korea. Okay. So yeah, I disagree with that. All authorities should be questioned. Yeah, this is straight from the political compass as well. I agree. A hierarchical, why can't I say that word? Hierarchical state is best. No, I don't like hierarchies. Disagree. It is important that the government follows the majority opinion, even if it is wrong. Mr. Beat, we live in a republic, not a democracy. Yeah, so we live United States is a republic, which actually, if you look up the definition, that just means representative democracy. There's a constitution, and law is above everything else, and people are elected. It's indirect democracy. Yes, you do have to have certain safeguards against the mob, the majority, which can get out of control. We see this on social media. I get it. So I would disagree with this one, actually. But what is wrong? Even if it is wrong. Oh, why do you have to put that on there? Who is to determine if it is wrong? The Constitution? Okay, neutral. Because of that last part, I got to go neutral on this one. That's throwing me off. The stronger the leadership, the better. What do they mean by stronger? Do they mean like they have, like they can bench press 300 pounds? That they are good at bringing a diverse group of people together? See, to me, that's good. But does that mean like you're actually you're stronger because you have a powerful military or lots of bodyguards to protect you? I just don't. So I don't like this one. Neutral. Democracy is more than a decision-making process. Yeah, democracy, the way I put it, is democracy is having your voice as a citizen heard. So yeah, I would agree with that. Environmental regulations are essential. I think I don't know if they're essential. They're necessary. They've been proven to be necessary because of what we've seen historically. I would say, I'll put agree on there. A better world will come from automation, science, and technology. I agree. Here we go. I'm a humanist. Transhumanist I think that's what they're going to lump me in. That category. Children should be educated in religious or traditional values. Not if those values suck. Just because something has been passed down from generation to generation to generation doesn't mean it's always good. This is actually a fallacy. So disagree. Traditions are of no value on their own. On their own? They still have value because if they're passed down, then you have to at least consider them. Doesn't mean you have to keep them, but they have to be respected at the very least, given a fair hearing or trial. Not sure where this is trying to lean me towards. I'll just put neutral on this one. Religion should play a role in government. I think intertwined with religion a lot of times is our values, our belief system. So if they worded it that way, maybe I'd be okay with that. But I'm a strong supporter of separation of church and state. So disagree with that one. Churches should be taxed the same way other institutions are taxed. I agree with that one, actually. I think it's really sad that churches get out of paying taxes, especially the Church of Scientology. Climate change is currently one of the greatest threats to our way of life. Um, yeah, it is. How do we solve the problem is a whole new discussion, but yeah, it is important that we work as a united world to combat climate change. Well, yeah, obviously. Society was better many years ago than it is now. Generally, no. I mean, I've studied history a little bit. It is important that we maintain the traditions of our past. Uh, it can be important, but sometimes, again, this goes back to like, we shouldn't just like by default carry on traditions for the sake of carrying them on because they've been carried on for so long. We have to constantly critique and reevaluate, analyze what we're carrying on to the next generation. So I'll put neutral on this one. It is important that we think in the long term beyond our lifespans. Ooh, another transhumanist question or a statement here. Yeah, I agree. Reason is more important than maintaining our culture. I think reason is a big part of our culture. Like the Enlightenment is a big part of our culture. The values of the Enlightenment, I should say. I'm on neutral on that one for that because drug use should be legalized or decriminalized. Agree. Same-sex marriage should be legal. Agree. No cultures are superior to others. That's I think because cultures are so like well, okay, well, you always have to think of the worst case scenario here. Like, what if it was part of your culture? Like say your culture is cannibalism. Like you think that cannibalism. I mean, I'm against cannibalism. So like I would say that a culture that doesn't believe in cannibalism is superior. But then again, I know what this leads to. This leads to white nationalism. This leads to a road to so I see where it goes. Just going to be neutral on that. Sex outside marriage is immoral. Again, this is they are copying and pasting from the political compass. I put the same thing I put on the other one. So disagree. If we accept migrants at all, it is important that they assimilate into our culture. I mean, it's not absolutely critical. It makes things easier for some institutions and some groups of people. Is it important that? Disagree. Abortion should be prohibited in most or all cases. Here's again where like what are we talking? I want to know specifically what cases we're talking about. And the good thing about ISideWith, which we'll be taking a little bit later here, is it goes into that a little bit more. So I'll put neutral on this one. Gun ownership. This is the first time we're hearing anything about gun ownership. Okay, finally. Should be prohibited for those without a valid reason. We'll disagree with that. It should be prohibited for those. Yeah. I generally lean towards being pro Second Amendment. Okay, let's just get that out of the way. I support single payer universal health care. Yeah, as I said earlier, I agree with that. Prostitution should be illegal. Disagree with that. Maintaining family values is essential. What the heck do you mean by family values? So neutral. To chase progress at all costs is dangerous. I agree with that. You got to be pragmatic. Genetic modification is a force for good, even on humans. I think mostly, but again, you've got to have some exceptions here. So neutral. We should open our borders to immigration. Compared to they are now, I would say immigration. Yeah, I think we should. And I think immigration should be expanded. I think the United States will be screwed in the long term if we don't allow more immigrants to come here. Just looking at current demographic trends, I'm worried about certain other countries having an economic edge over us if we don't open up immigration. But when you say open borders, there's a red flag that goes up in people's heads here. They're just like, you just let them flood in. Anybody can come in. They don't even need to have a visa or any kind of documentation whatsoever. So this is, again, this is too open-ended and too broad, so neutral. Governments should be as concerned about foreigners as they are about their own citizens. I mean, we want to be concerned about humans, but we also want to be pragmatic here. We want to make sure that, it's similar to a hospital trying to deal with a pandemic. You try to save people who are first, who are able to be saved, and then you worry about the others. Like, you have to pick and choose your own battles if you have limited resources. So in terms of scarcity, if just thinking about this through an economics lens, I think I disagree. All people, regardless of factors like culture or sexuality, should be treated equally. I agree. Actually, strongly agree. And the last one, it is important that we further my group's goals above all others. What if my goals are wrong? So neutral. Okay, here's where we are on the 8 values. Looks like I'm on economics, I'm a centrist. So 54% equality, 54.5% equality, 45.5% markets. Okay, I would assume that was a little bit more markets driven. Diplomatic axis, balanced. So boring. God, I'm boring. So 46.1% nationalist, 53.9% globalist. Civil axis, liberal, 63.3. So civil liberties are obviously really important to me. I lean away from authoritarianism. No surprise. Progressive, closest match is liberalism. So yeah, for tradition, I value progress more than tradition. This is no surprise. I like this axis, by the way, societal axis. I like the way that they worded it. And so my closest match is liberalism. He's a liberal. Ideological matching is a work in progress and is much less accurate than values and axes. And so this is a smaller version of that, it looks like. So we have the 8 value. I like this test. I also especially like the fact that I could put neutral on many things when it was a statement that was problematic, that was something that was too broad, too simplified, whatever, not enough nuance. So yeah, how we doing in the comments? Yeah, thanks for watching, by the way. Holy crap, 1,800 people watching. Oh, brave enough. I don't know how brave I am when I'm putting neutral on a bunch of stuff, but I'm hoping you're at least seeing my thought process as I take these. Okay, I'm going to take the next one here. So far, if you're just joining us, I've done the political compass test and the 8 values. The political compass test I've taken many times before. It had been a while. I did one for every president, and I even forgot the fact that you need to scroll down to see what, and I was in the green on that one. So as far as the 8 values, I was considered a liberal. By the way, stop labeling people and lumping people into groups. That's pretty lame. You're not really helping that much. Maybe you're trying to have shortcuts for conversations, but just labeling people in general, like, look at that guy. He's somebody who wears shirts that say, he's one of those rock the vote shirt people. Yeah. So next up, we got the 9 axes. I think this is pretty similar to the 8 values. This one I've never taken again. It's been recommended to me for a long time. So we have more than 9. Oh, I see. Okay, so similar situation. So there's going to be 9 spectrums that I'm going to fall on. I see. This is much better, way better than political compass. Okay, so we got progress versus tradition, federal versus unitaries. So unitary, I'm assuming like localism. democracy versus authority, secular versus religious, assimilist versus multiculturalist, globalist versus isolationist. I hate that term, isolationist. You can't be isolationist in the 21st century. I'm sorry. Equality versus markets. Why do they have to be opposing ends? Why is it either or? It's an either or fallacy. Militarist or pacifist, security or freedom. All right, let's do this. Oh, first of all, I got to read this. 9 axes based off of the 8 values, which I just took, is a political quiz that attempts to assign percentages on 9 different political axes. You will be presented by a statement, and then you will answer with your opinion on the statement, from strongly agree to strongly disagree, with each answer slightly affecting your scores. At the end of the quiz, your answers will be compared to the maximum possible for each value, thus giving you a percentage answer honestly. There are 2 versions of the quiz, a full version with 24 questions per axis for a total of 216 questions, and a short version with 5 questions per axis and for a total of 45. Okay, I'm going to take the short one. Because we have other ones to take. Oh, God, 216 questions. Okay. All right, so 1 of 45. It is better to maintain a balanced budget to ensure the welfare. This is the exact same one from the 8 values. So I've already explained. So this will go probably quicker if they're using a lot of the same questions. All right. So I got to remember what I put. And if I change my mind on any of these, that will show you how my brain is constantly just not ever satisfied with my opinion, which could be a bad thing. Okay. I disagree with that, because you want welfare for all citizens. Nobody but me can adequately represent my views. Okay, here's a different one. It seems like everybody has already tried to represent my views for me. So I'm really tempted to agree with this one, but I think that ultimately you just don't know. I mean, I think other people can know you really well. Like, I think Mrs. Beach, she could probably adequately represent my views. I'm going to put neutral on that one. Human-caused climate change is currently one of the greatest threats to our way of life. So it's another similar one from 8 values, but they word it a little bit differently. I agree. There must be a separation between church and state. As I said earlier with other questions, I agree. A hierarchical state is best. Disagree. Maintaining family values is essential. Again, we've got that family values thing. What the heck does that really mean? So let's go neutral on that. All societies are a blend of cultures. That's an interesting one. That's new. That's I guess, technically true. Yeah. Agree. Elections are a waste of resources. Okay. No, I disagree with that. I think elections are incredibly important. Only those who served in the military should be able to gain power in government. No, I think it's really important that you have civilians that are in these positions. There's a lot of problems that could happen if you only have a military in charge. So disagree. Theocracy is a good system of government. I disagree. I'm not a fan of theocracies. Everybody should speak at least 2 languages. I think that'd be great. I think that it would help you out in your life. I think that more people would be probably getting along. There'd be more empathy overall. But I think it should be your choice. Like, I don't think anyone should force you to speak at least 2 languages. So I'm going to go neutral on this. People should have equal opportunity to succeed. Absolutely. So I'll put strongly agree on that one, because that's really important to me. Testing products on animals is ethical. I mean, when you say animals, human beings are technically animals. So, but I think not to be disingenuous here, but I'm assuming they're talking about, like, rats and mice and maybe pigs or something. I don't know. Most species of animals are actually highly intelligent. So I understand, like, where organizations like PETA come from. Let's. But is it ethical? It just depends on, I guess, how you do it, and maybe which type of animal too. Because I do think that you need to distinguish, like between a fish, for example, and a pig. A pig is much more intelligent than a fish, on average. So, yeah, I'm going to put neutral. It's just too complicated. Immigrants should be expected to learn the language of the country. I mean, it would make their lives easier. It would make everyone's lives easier. Uh, but again, I just don't think they should be forced to. So neutral on that. War is never justified. I disagree. As I said earlier, I think war is justified if you're defending your borders, if you're defending your country. A group of states. Oh, I clicked disagree on that last one. A group of states without a strong national government is merely an alliance, not a nation. Pretty much. That was the problem with the Articles of Confederation in the early days of the Republic. So, yeah. The government should not regulate the economy at all. I disagree. That's too utopian to assume that free markets can function like and where everything works out for everyone and there's no exploitation. And so, yeah, disagree. We must go back to a basic way of life without modern conveniences. Disagree. Police need more power and protection. Generally, no. I would say they have plenty of power. I think that a police state is not generally a good idea. I've been troubled by the rise of the militarization of local police forces across the United States. So yeah, I'll disagree on this. Also, I want to add that generally people will do the right thing regardless if the police are around or not. A recent example, the University of Kansas basketball team, the Jayhawks, they just won the national championship a few weeks ago. And there was a huge celebration across the streets of Lawrence afterward. I was actually there with my family. My daughters were there, even though it was late. It was chaotic, yes, but there were an estimated 170,000 people there, I believe was the number. No, not 170,000. Maybe it was 70,000. I'm inflating the numbers. Okay, it was 70,000. There were a total of 3 arrests made that night. Generally, people were great, and it helps if you're in a good mood if your team won. But I'm just saying. So disagree. Sorry for the tangent. International aid is a waste of money. This is the same one from 8 Values, I believe, or maybe it was Political Compass, or maybe even both. No, I disagree. I think that it can be helpful for diplomacy. Democracy is more than a decision-making process, also from 8 Values. I agree with that. Oppression by corporations is more of a concern than oppression by governments. Same from the 8 Values. And I put strongly disagree. Yeah, I'm also going to put strongly disagree. Diplomacy only hurts nations. Disagree. The government should not fund any religious organizations in any way. Agree. Separation of church and state. We should respect those who have served in our military. Yeah. But again, I don't like that word should. Like, because to me, like it implies it should be the law, So I'm going to go neutral because I'm not sure what they mean by that. Local governments address issues that the national government would never touch without them. Okay, let me read that again. That's a weirdly worded one. Local governments address issues that the national government would never touch without them. I mean, that's a big assumption. I do generally agree with the fact that localism should be prioritized over federalism. So in the case of the United States, I think that local government officials generally know more about solving problems in their community than the federal government. But keep in mind that the federal government, a lot of times they are working, side by side with local government officials or politicians. So it's not like they're going over their back. They're like especially like the recent example, the pandemic. Um, there were a lot of people were freaking out. Oh, the federal government is trying to do too much. A lot of times all the federal government was doing was giving the resources, distributing the resources. They weren't telling the states or the counties or the cities how to, solve the pandemic in their local communities. They were just providing them the resources. So this gets to be a very complicated issue. So for that reason, I'll put neutral. War usually leads to worse outcomes. Agree. Yeah. The national government needs more power. No, disagree. Strong states weaken a nation. So I'm assuming this means like if this is in the context of the United States, like California being a stronger state, that weakens the United States as a whole as a nation. I don't know. It's too vague, so I'm going to go neutral on this one. Only extremely talented immigrants, if that, should be permitted to enter the country. Disagree, because who's to say who's talented, who's extremely talented, and who's not? A piece of paper from a college? That's not always the perfect indicator of who's going to be successful. A lot of times people become successful out of nowhere. You just didn't see it coming. And in general, if somebody's an immigrant coming to a country, they are going to be more driven, I would argue, than the majority of the population already. They would have more ambition and frankly be harder workers. Okay, so I just think that's when you say extremely talented. Yeah, no, I disagree with that, and especially when they say only. The poor choose to be poor. Strongly disagree with that. What a dumb statement. It's one of the dumbest things you will ever read right now, what you're reading right now. The poor choose to be poor. Nobody chooses to be poor. Religious organizations often provide better assistance to the poor than the government does. Very similar statement to what we saw with 8 Values and Political Compass. So, again, I think they can provide better assistance. In many cases, we do see this, but that doesn't mean that's always the case. So neutral. Countries fall apart with constant war. Yeah, I would agree with that. People should hold more loyalty to their local state than their country. So like me here in Kansas should be more loyal to Kansans and my state's interest than the state or the United States as a whole. I just, again, either or, black and white fallacy here. So I don't think that doesn't have to be either or. It can be both. So neutral on that one. The United Nations should have a military to enforce its resolutions. I mean, they do. The peacekeepers, they're not very effective. I do have I've had conversations with others about the possibility of maybe somehow, someday, some way, NATO merging with the United Nations to have more of an actual military alliance, as opposed to just like, we're going to do this and it's not really going to, it's like a slap on the wrist type of deal that the United Nations. I mean, United Nations, it has its problems. So yeah, I think that if we're talking about military to enforce its resolutions, you got to be careful with that. I can see how that can escalate to something where only a few countries' militaries would dominate, and that could be bad. So, but I think I'm still going to leaning towards agree on it. This is a tough one. I'm tempted to go neutral, but I'm trying to get some more definitive results here with this political quiz. So I'm going with agree on this one. Governments should be as concerned about foreign citizens as they are about those within their borders. This is the same one as earlier. Yeah. And I disagree with that. I mean, purely when it comes, it just, again, economics, scarcity, resources. Some freedom must be given up in order to keep people safe. Well, the classic example that happened recently is freedom of, like vaccines. Like, should it be somebody's personal choice to get the vaccine if they don't want to get it for various reasons? Should they be forced to get it? Or should they be forced to get it for the greater good? It's the whole personal liberty versus greater good argument that has been going on since the earliest human beings have been around. So, gosh, it's tough. Some freedom must be given up in order. Yeah, I mean, we do it all the time, right? I think we have to drive the speed limit. We have to obey the law. We have to wear seatbelts. We have to. We don't smoke. Most places, smoking is banned indoors to keep people safe. I mean, yeah. So there are certain situations where some freedoms must be given up. And again, when we say freedoms, like there's your freedom, but there's also the freedom of the people around you. And if you're doing something that takes away the freedoms of everyone around you, that should not be allowed. So this is a utilitarian idea. I mean, it's like you want to. Freedom is the end goal. It's still the end goal. We all, for the most part, want freedom, but it's not so cut and dry. And so you can't be an absolutist on everything when it comes to this stuff. So agree. The sacrifice of some civil liberties is necessary to protect us from acts of terrorism. You know, I'm a pretty big hardliner on civil liberties in general. So, you know, this is compared to some of the questions from previous, like 8 values and political compass, this is more vague. So what civil liberties are we talking about here? I don't know. But I just lean towards disagree on this one. This is just what my gut is going with here. Don't mess with my civil liberties or yours. I support regional unions. It's the same one as 8 values, such as the European Union. I agree, especially again if it's to promote free trade. People's freedom should have no limits. Again, this is similar to the one a few statements back where, you know, it's utilitarian sometimes. You've got to consider other people's freedoms. And so are you taking away their freedoms by you having absolute freedom? And the recent debate on Twitter this past week, I chimed in a little bit as well, but you've got to have some nuance there. When we say absolute free speech, nobody really is for that because there's certain situations where almost everybody agrees you can't say certain things in certain situations because you might literally put someone's life in danger. You might, by saying something, lead to death and destruction. So you've got to be careful. Not destruction on someone, but you can't just be threatening people. Threatening the president, for example, online. You can't do that. So there has to be some freedom or some limits to freedom of speech. So that's just one example. So in general, there has to be some limits in order to protect the freedom of others. So disagree. Religion should be removed from everything in our government. Similar to the 8 values one, but they worded it differently. So just if it's just religion, I would say agree. Yeah, because you want that separation of church and state. Nations should cooperate whenever it benefits them both. I think they should try to cooperate regardless. Compromises, a lot of times you're not benefiting, you are giving up something, but both sides are giving up something. So I would put neutral for this one. Abortion should be legal in all cases. Oh, they didn't even put the exception of any exceptions at all. So they worded it differently. Interesting. See how they lead you with these statements? Like, see how subjective these political quizzes are? Again, I lean more towards the pro-life side of things here. So in all cases, no. Like, I think that there's a case to be made that, you know, maybe at a certain point for sure. No, absolutely at a certain point, not maybe. Like late-term abortions to me are frankly horrifying. Disagree. Gosh, they said legal in all cases. See, I don't know anybody I know this is an anecdotal fallacy, but I don't know anybody who would say they're for late-term abortions. Like, ugh. Disagree. Elections are an effective way of showing government approval. Yeah, I agree with that. And last one for the 9 axes. Traditions are of no value on their own. This is probably the exact same one from the 8 values. So, what did I put? I put this is complicated, right? Because you got they can have value in the right context. Yeah, I put neutral. I'll put neutral. Okay, so here we are with my results for the 9 axes. Looks like 50-50 for federal versus unitary. So between federal power and local power, in terms of like how federalism works, the balance between the powers of the federal government and local governments. Democratic, 70%. That's similar to the results of the 8 values. So 30% authority, 70% democracy. Globalist, 70%. That's higher than I think the other one was. 30% isolationist, which again, I'm not sure if I like that term isolationist, because that's not really possible in this time, the modern world we live in. Moderate pacifist, so 40% militarist, 60% pacifist. Okay. Neutral for security versus freedom. I thought freedom would have been higher. Wow. All right, equality, 70%, markets, 30%. See, I don't know about that. That's different than the other ones, isn't it? And again, why do they have to be diametrically opposed? Why? Secular, I tend to be a really strong advocate for a secular government. I think religious nationalism is a dangerous thing. Theocracies are not good. Moderate progressive, so 60% progress, 40% tradition. Okay, so that's kind of along the lines of the transhumanist spectrum of the 8 values. And finally, neutral for assimilationist and multiculturalist. All right. Interesting on that one. I thought it'd be more 50-50, but fairly close. So closest match is social libertarianism. Please note, this does only factor the democratic, authoritarian, globalist, isolationist, equality, markets, and progressive traditional axes. Okay. Yeah. So I'm not too familiar with that term, but I've heard some of my viewers call themselves that. So hello. Let's not form a tribe. Please do not form a tribe. Please don't start a political party based on this. Okay. So if you're just joining me so far, I have taken 3 political quizzes. So you can find out that I'm a dirty fascist. No, I've taken the political compass, which again, not a good test. I don't recommend it, but it's fun for memes. It's easy to meme. I took the 8 values after that, and then I just finished taking the 9 axes. I've been doing this an hour and 48 minutes now. So I think I have 3 more to do, but I'm thinking they'll go by quicker, except for the 10 groups one. So we'll save that for last. So we'll do the political typology one next. This is one of the 2 that I have my government students do. So if you're not familiar with it, it's the shortest probably a political test you can take. So that's probably why I had my students do it. It's like, oh yeah, if I'm forcing them to do something, I'm trying to make it less painful. So the Pew Research Center, I wasn't going to do this one, but then I had some folks on Twitter say, hey, Mr. Beat, they updated it. Because I'm not really the biggest fan of this one, but they did update it a few months ago. So I'm curious to look at the changes. Now, notice how it says, like, they're automatically putting you into these kind of cringy categories. Are you a faith and flag conservative? progressive left, or somewhere in between. One of my pet peeves lately, by the way, has been from pundits who say the left. I have no idea. To this day, I have no idea what they mean when they say the left, because that can mean many different things. It really could, and I'm hoping you're realizing that by me taking these quizzes tonight. So no, I used to teach regular government. I did not teach AP Gov, but I recommend my Supreme Court series. Okay, let's go ahead and start the political typology quiz. We only have 16 questions. Okay, I'm going to zoom in. Can you see that okay? Yeah, I'm going to zoom in a little bit on this one. These crappy websites where they... There we go. That's good. If you had to choose, would you rather have a smaller government providing fewer services, a bigger government providing more services? Wow, pretty vague there, but easy to understand for a lot of folks. I generally say that I am not a fan of the government in general just doing micromanaging stuff. Okay, I'm strongly against command economies. I think that governments tend to make problems worse a lot of times. There's a lot of unintended consequences. Often politicians get in there and they mean well, but things go wrong. They mismanage money, resources, taxpayer dollars. Yes. But oftentimes, one of the few good things that governments can do is give people a paycheck. And I've seen this firsthand. I have family members and friends who have had to deal with this, but when in terms of just like, oh yeah, and also like in the pandemic, I got a stimulus deposit and deposits in my bank account, so they can distribute money pretty well. But in general, I am skeptical of a bigger government just trying to micromanage. So I will say I'd rather have a small government providing fewer services if it came down to it. Question 2. Which of the following statements come closest to your view? Americans' openness to people from all over the world is essential to who we are as a nation. If America is too open to people from all over the world, we risk losing our identity as a nation. Okay, but our identity is a big part of American identity. If you wanted to try to oversimplify it, is because of immigration. Like, that's a huge part of our identity. And so I think it's critical that we remain open to people from all over the world, and it's going to help us in the long term. And immigration significantly helps countries out. So I'm going to go with this one. Question 3. In general, would you say experts who study a subject for many years are usually better at making good policy decisions about that subject than other people, usually worse at making good policy decisions about that subject than other people, neither better nor worse at making good policy decisions about that subject than other people? There's a difference between being an expert in a subject and an expert at policy decisions. So I think in terms of like if you are an expert at, let's say, bugs, insects, a lot about insects. Okay. What's that called when you study insects? In the chat. Okay. But that doesn't mean what's the best policy that a government should put in place because you have a lot of variables, you have a lot of stakeholders to consider. You might be a little biased towards the insects, and because of that, your opinions on policies might be more prone to have unintended consequences on stakeholders that you don't really. So yeah, I'm going to put neither better nor worse on this one. Question 4, thinking about increased trade of goods and services between the U.S. and other nations in recent decades, would you say that the U.S. has gained more than it has lost because increased trade has helped lower prices and increasing competitiveness of some U.S. businesses, or lost more than it has gained because increased trade has cost jobs in manufacturing and other industries and lowered wages for some U.S. workers. Okay, this is a great thing to think about. Like we can have probably an 8-hour discussion about just this one issue. So the whole globalism versus like protectionism, I mean, really free trade versus protectionism is really what this whole debate is about. I lean, as many of you probably already know, I lean towards free trade and competition and markets, global markets, increasing competitiveness and decreasing prices. I think the trade wars of recent years have only raised prices, caused inflation, which is we're all hurting because of the inflation happening right now. But it's not so simple in terms of like, okay, it's not just globalization that's causing U.S. workers to lose their good paying jobs or stagnant wages, causing stagnant wages overall. It's also automation. It's also, I mean, there's other factors. Those are the big two: globalization and automation. So, a lot of times when we think about, okay, well, it's cost jobs in manufacturing and other industries, a lot of times it's only certain industries or certain types of manufacturing that's hurt. And I don't want to downplay the pain that these workers have gone through in recent years. I personally have friends and family that are in that situation. But in terms of going back to the pragmatic utilitarian argument, looking at helping the most people, I think it's more important to increase the competitiveness of businesses, and so that there can be more prosperity overall, particularly with lower prices. And we are seeing that now more than we have in probably 40 years. Inflation is really hurting society right now. So that's why I go with this one. Question 5, how much more, if anything, needs to be done to ensure equal rights for all Americans, regardless of their racial or ethnic backgrounds? I mean, you got, again, unintended consequences. You got to be careful with how you do this. So I'll say a little. That's a good compromise on this. Question 6, which of the following statements comes closest to your view? Business corporations make too much profit. Most corporations make a fair and reasonable amount of profit. Oh, man, there's no other option. I hate how I have to choose between these two. Because both are true. Yeah, it does. I'll just put too much just because I'm thinking about certain ones that don't pay taxes. Certain corporations get bailed out by the government. Crony capitalism is a problem. Question 7, how much, if at all, would it bother you to regularly hear people speak a language other than English in public places in your community? Who gives a crap? Not at all. On a scale of 0 to 100, where 0 means you feel as cold and negative as possible, and 100 means you feel as warm and positive as possible, how do you feel toward Democrats? How do you feel towards Republicans? This is just a partisanship question, isn't it? How about I put 0 on both? Okay, no. In recent years, Democrats have been the lesser of two evils, in my opinion. So I'll just put that out there. So let's put Democrats at 20, Republicans at 10. Okay. Question 9, which of these statements best describes your opinion about the United States? The U.S. stands above all other countries in the world. Well, this is clearly not the case. If you look at the data, we're not at the top of the list when it comes to many categories, most categories. Second one, the U.S. is one of the greatest countries in the world, along with some others. Okay. And there are other countries that are better than the U.S. I mean, when you say better, I don't like that statement overall, like just saying one country is better than the other, because that's oversimplifying it. I'm going to put this one. Question 10, how much of a problem, if any, would you say each of the following are in the country today? People being too easily offended by things others say. Okay, it can be, I mean, I'm on Twitter. I understand. It can be a minor problem. People saying things that are offensive to others. just as much. Yeah, people trolling has gotten out of control because everyone's trying to out edge each other and trying to be shocking. And when increasingly, it's just you just can't shock people very easily anymore. You really can't. We're also desensitized to everything. Even my daughters, like my 10-year-old and 7-year-old daughters, are just like, like unless they're sheltered, which my kids are not. Yeah, so it's a minor problem, I guess. But question 11, which comes closer to your review of candidates for political office, even if neither is exactly right? I hate this. I usually feel like there is at least one candidate who shares most of my views. None of the candidates represent my views well. Okay, yeah, I'm going to go with that one. That's usually the case. Question 12, in general, how much do white people, benefit from advantages in society that black people do not have? That's it, huh? We're going to simplify it to that. Okay, well, okay, so remember, race is a social construct, and I guess for purposes like this, we know that black people have historically been treated as second-class citizens. There's still systemic racism in society today, so I have to consider that for my answer. How much do white people benefit from advantages in society? Well, I will tell you this. I guess like the question is like thinking about purely like, okay, if people's perception of you when they first meet you, judging you on your skin color. I think that white people do, for lack of a better way to put it, do have some advantages, like just from like it all comes down to stereotyping and prejudices. I'm stuck between a fair amount and not too much. But because I'm thinking about systemic racism and, a lot of it we don't see explicitly, a lot of it's implicit. So I'm going to put a fair amount. Question 13, do you think greater social acceptance of people who are, there's a transgender question on here. Is this something we really, okay. Do you think that greater social acceptance of people who are transgender, I just think we should let transgender people be who they want to be. Like, who cares? Just let them live their lives. Why are we trying to tell them how to live their lives? Who are they hurting? People who identify as a gender that is different from the sex. Okay. Do you think greater social acceptance of people who are transgender is? Yeah, it's good for society. It's good. Like, we should accept everybody, okay? And they're not hurting anyone by being transgender. They're not, as long as they're adults. And when you hear like them bringing it up about kindergartners, like trying to indoctrinate them to be transgender, that is just not happening. That's made up. Or if it is, like maybe they cherry pick one crazy circumstance where something slightly like that maybe happened. That's what's maybe making a Fox News headline, but no, it's very good to be open to people for being who they are. I hate that question was even on there. Question 14. Overall, would you say people who are convicted of crimes in this country serve too much time in prison, too little time? Wow. Again, this is too broad, but I think just I have to pick something. So I'm going to say too much time in prison. The prison industrial complex is a problem. The drug war has been a problem for decades. So and then systemic racism related to that. That's why I choose that answer. Question 15, which of the following statements comes closest to your view? Religion should be kept separate from government policies, or government policies should support religious values and beliefs? Well, not beliefs. Values, I can kind of see where they're coming from. So I'm going to go, separation of church and state. There you go. And last question. In the future, do you think U.S. policies should try to keep it so America is the only military superpower? Or it would be acceptable if another country became as military powerful as U.S.? Ooh, that's an interesting one. I mean, obviously I'd be biased to say, oh no, we should be the only military superpower, but I know all the shenanigans that the United States military has done. The most recent example is drone warfare, which is horrifying. When you really research drone warfare, which I encourage you all to do so, which the United States has been the main one responsible for that, it is horrifying, and it is something I am deeply troubled by. So that's why I'm going to click this one. All right. Results. Your best fit is outsider left, along with 10% of the public. Okay, read more about outsider left. Outsider left are the youngest typology group. Whoa, thank you. I'm so young. They hold liberal views on most issues, particularly on issues of racial equality and immigration. So they must have weighted that one about blacks and whites heavily. And overwhelmingly vote Democratic. That is not the case. I do not overwhelmingly vote Democratic. I'm sorry, I don't. They are more skeptical of government performance than other Democrat-oriented groups, though far less so than those in GOP-oriented groups. While they aren't particularly happy with the Democratic Party, they also have deeply negative views of the GOP. See, there's that one question where it asked me how I felt about both parties. Though nearly half of outsider left describe their own political views as liberal, only about 3 in 10 identify as Democrats. About half say they are independents. That would be me, who lean toward the Democratic Party. Okay, well, I said the Democratic Party in recent years has been the lesser of two evils. Yes. So I guess that's mostly, I apparently ride skateboards. I am dissatisfied with parties. Liberal on most issues. That term liberal is such a misused term, but okay. But it appears like I'm really a true outsider here. So I guess I'm a radical. Oh, okay. So this is breaks it down here. I like how it breaks it down a little bit more here. But yeah, this is still not a very good test. I don't recommend the political typology quiz. So far, the two best I've seen are at 8 values and 9 axes. So we are past 2 hours here. I've taken 4 different tests. Mrs. Beat told me that that's called the political typology quiz. Okay, well, at least there's Liam's with me. All right. Mrs. Beat said that I shouldn't take too long doing this. I'm not sure how long I know the ISideWith quiz isn't too bad, so I'm going to go ahead and do that one. I hear the 10 groups one can be pretty long, so we'll see. We'll see, but we're going to keep going here. Thanks for being here tonight. I'm thinking a lot of you aren't too surprised on my views. Yeah, I'm not too surprised with a lot of these. But then again, I had never taken the 8 values or 9 axes at all. So that was completely brand new. I have taken the ISideWith, so we're going to do that. I did take it last year. ISideWith, again, is one I use with my government students, and it's good for them, like in terms of like matching their political beliefs up with candidates. So if there's an election coming up, and we always had mock elections. So, for example, the 2024 presidential election, which it's a ways away, but that's already on here. Let me zoom in a little bit. I don't really want to focus on candidates, though. I just want to do the general quiz. And it's going to match me with political parties at the very least, but I don't think that we should be blindly following parties or candidates. So that's why I really didn't want to take this one. But the thing I do like about ISideWith also is that it breaks down the stances a little bit more than the other sites do. So we're going to go through this. Let's see here. It's longer than it used to be. Wonder if I have to answer this. Hopefully not. Okay. Oh, I can do other stances. Okay. So I'm going to as quickly as I can go through this. Should funding for local police departments be redirected to social and community-based programs? Oh, Mr. Beat wants to defund the police. Okay, here we go. Other stances, definitely. Okay. Yes, no, I don't want to abolish the police. Yes, replace police with unarmed community. No. Read more stances. Okay. Well, it's taking me to a new window here. That's not showing you. Oh, where'd it go? Well, dang. All right. Well, I don't know where that window went, but we'll keep it here. I'm going to add my own stance. Both. Keep local funding for local police departments, but add funding for social and community-based programs. I'm radical. Should police departments be allowed to use military-grade equipment? Oh, I mentioned this earlier. I don't think so generally, but let's see what the other stances are. Okay, well, I can see this one here, yes, but with strict training on how and when to use the equipment. No extreme situations should be handled by higher agencies. All right, I like that one better. I'm going with that one. Oh, you can also put how important this is to you. Okay, I'm going to put somewhat for. Oh, I guess you can't fill that out yet. Wonder why it's not letting me do. Oh, you can. Okay, so somewhat. Up here you can't. Interesting. It's probably because I put my own answer. Okay. Should convicted criminals have the right to vote? I'm kind of a radical on this one. I generally lean towards yes. But I can kind of see this one here. Convicted, except for felons convicted of murder or violent crimes. I'll give you that one. Sure. This issue is less important to me. Yeah, that's important to have that on there. Social issues should. Oh, you can look for more questions. Well, to save time, we're not going to do all of them here. Social issues: should the government continue to fund Planned Parenthood? Well, not to fund abortions. Yes, as long as funding is not used for abortion procedures. Okay, I'll do that. Is this issue important? Not as important. Less. Okay. What is your stance on abortion? Okay. Other stances. Okay. Yeah, I kind of am sympathetic to this one. I don't agree with it, but the government has no right to ban it entirely. I think abortions should be ended, but I think that it's something that you have to work with the women who have to go through this. So I hate how I have to still. So let me add my own stance on this. I hate abortion, generally speaking, but government getting too involved is a bad idea. I'm generally pro-life, so I think I might. The closest thing is this one actually: pro-life, but allow in cases of rape, incest, or danger to the mother or child. But also, I feel like there's also this one, but ban after the first 3 months. Yeah, it's such a tough issue. I feel like and again, this issue shouldn't be like. I feel like the abortion is a wedge issue. It's meant to be there. People in power love this issue in the national conversation because it's a great way to keep us divided. Because this is a perfect issue to be divided about. Um, and if you look at polls, like it's pretty 50-50 for the past 30, 40 years on abortion, and at least in the United States. So I don't think abortion should be brought up that much for political campaigns. I think it's something that, economic issues are much more important than something like this. Do you support the legalization of same-sex marriage? Yes, we've already. So less important to me. Well, I'll put somewhat on that one. National security issues. Should the president be able to authorize military force against Al Qaeda without congressional approval? No. Congress, it says right in the Constitution that they have the power. I know there's the War Authorization Act, the War Powers Act. I understand, but let me put that. No, Congress should approve all military conflicts. I think this is more important to me, actually. Should the U.S. assassinate suspected terrorists in foreign countries? Let's look at other stances on this one. Okay, no, they should be captured and given a fair trial. Yeah, and again, this is important to me, more important. Domestic policy issues. Should there be more restrictions on the current process of purchasing a gun? Let's look at other stances. I would say I am mostly against restrictions, but I think there can be reasonable restrictions. Okay. Yes, require strict background checks, psychological testing, and training. There is the gun show loophole, which is it's a minor problem. It's still a problem. I hear that it's not as big a problem as some are making it out to be, though. I don't know. I kind of go back and forth between between these two. No, only for assault weapons. I think we already have restrictions for criminals and the mentally ill. As far as I know, I hope those restrictions aren't gone. For that reason, let's put yes here. Require strict background checks, psychological testing, and training. I'll put somewhat for there for the. Oh, it's not let me. Oh, somewhat. Okay. Should teachers be allowed to carry guns at school? I have a weird stance on this. I think that that schools should say that teachers are allowed to, but then teachers really aren't allowed to for the most part. It should be really hard for them to, because you don't want that many guns at a school. Let's be honest here. But if potential mass murderers think that there might be the possibility that teachers are carrying guns at school, they'd be less likely to, attack a school, shoot up a school. We don't want Sandy Hook to ever happen again. I think okay, so this is at least one teacher or security guard. They would have to be really trained. I mean, yeah, you got to worry about accidental shootings. I mean, if you look at the statistics, a lot of the shootings that happen are accidental, or then you also got suicides. I mean, the more guns around, generally the worse. And plus, teachers got enough to worry about. So I say you can tell everybody that teachers can have guns, anybody can have a gun, but then what you're really doing is you're hiring specially trained security guards. Okay. Somewhat. I wonder if this is why that one wasn't working. Huh, that's weird. Oh, now it's working. Okay. All right. We're down to should victims of gun violence be allowed to sue firearms dealers and manufacturers? I don't know about that. Yeah, no, manufacturers and dealers should only be held liable for negligence. All right, somewhat. All right, economic issues, I think are more important. So we'll see. We might answer more of these. Should businesses be required to provide paid leave for full-time employees during the birth of a child or sick family member? But only for companies with 100 plus employees. I don't know about that. Oh, okay. I like this. Yes, but the federal government should sponsor this program instead of businesses. So, I mean, we don't like the federal government doing too much now. They probably would mess us up, but um, we don't want to hurt small businesses. They shouldn't have to worry about this stuff. So, wonder if there's any. That doesn't seem to be working. All right. Oh, where'd we go? Where'd we go? Yeah, we'll stick with that. I feel like this is going to make me again a lefty, but I'm hesitant, but I'm going to put the federal government should sponsor this program instead of businesses. I do think it's very important that uh, there's paid leave. Especially with if you're helping out a sick family member. And then, yeah, maternity and paternity leave is pretty critical there too. I mean, as a parent, I know how important it was that I was lucky that I was at home to help with after the births of my daughters during the summer months. They were both born during the summer, and it was nice that I was around during that very critical time. All right, so we'll put somewhat important. Should the U.S. raise taxes on the rich? Okay. No, not on all income brackets. No. I don't like any of these choices. Oh, here we go. Lower the income tax rate and remove all existing tax loopholes for large corporations. There we go. I like that. This is more important to me. Should the government raise the federal minimum wage? Okay, this might surprise some of you. I actually am against the minimum wage. I think that it doesn't make any sense in terms of just looking at economics, and we have unpaid internships already. I think it's better for for private businesses to be incentivized to pay their workers more, and I think there are if that means that you have to like a minimum wage. Oh yeah, Mr. Beat, that's how you do that is a minimum wage. That's a disincentive, and I think there are unintended consequences with doing that. You oftentimes, like what we're seeing right now, actually, is when you pay your workers more, businesses pass on those higher prices to consumers, and inflation is a real concern. Also, automation increasing is also a concern. It's almost inevitable at this point, though. I mean, there's not really any stopping automation in the coming decades, assuming the trends continue. But I think instead, now, if you get rid of the minimum wage, here's my caveat: you have to have universal basic income. I am a fan of universal basic income. I used to be against it. I've come around, and a big reason why was the presidential campaign of Andrew Yang. That was something that he actually was a big reason why I changed my mind on that. So he was really good at convincing me, along with some other people, and just looking at the examples of universal basic income that has been tried in certain parts of the world already. It has been tried. It's still being tested out. It's not perfect, but I think it would be better than a minimum wage. So, and I think at a philosophical level, I think tying whether or not you should survive as a human being, whether or not you get to survive, like pay for basic necessities, to a job, when everybody works, everybody does. Like, it doesn't mean they get paid for it. And I always bring up the example of taking care of a sick relative or raising kids. You don't get paid for that. The labor market doesn't recognize that. Economists don't count that as like they don't count you as part of. You're not even considered in unemployment figures, but it doesn't mean that it's not valuable. So there's a lot of work that is not valued in economics, and so for that reason, I think UBI is a solution, especially with automation just inevitably going to be more and more of a thing. So yeah, let's see here. I'll say no and eliminate all wage standards. But again, this is only if you have universal basic income. Let's go ahead and show some more economic questions. Should employ? Oh, good. There's universal basic income. Yeah. All right. There we go. Okay. I'm glad that was on there. That will clear things up. Should employers be required to pay men and women the same salary for the same job? By law? I mean, there's a lot of variables into this. We do see women not paid as much as men, but it's not so cut and dry as like the gender wage gap is complicated. A lot of times it's oversimplified. So I don't think. I mean, I can kind of see this. I can, businesses should be required to publish their salary ranges for each position. Maybe that would be a good compromise. Uh, you know, Still, though, I don't like the idea of government stepping in to do this. I just think that, but all they're doing is like making it more competitive. Okay, so maybe that is the market position. So I'll put yes. Businesses should be required to publish their salary ranges for each position. It's an interesting one. Put somewhat on this for importance. UBI is most important to me, right? I mean, this has been an issue I've been focusing on for a couple of years now. It's really important to me. Should welfare recipients be tested for drugs? I mean, if it's UBI, then no. So it depends on the type. And also, yeah, this is a waste of time and money because only if they have a criminal history related to drug abuse. Okay, that's fair. That's a good compromise. And this is less important to me. All right, we're going to move on because we're taking too long. Transportation issues. Should the government increase spending on public transportation? I think, yeah. I see potholes on the highway in Kansas right now. The infrastructure is crumbling in the United States, and supposedly it's one of the top ranked in the world. Well, people that say that haven't been here lately. It hasn't been going so well in recent years, and maybe that's the privileged me saying that, but I think we have lots of room for improvement when it comes to infrastructure in the United States. And I think that is something the government should step in and handle because the private sector just does not do a good enough job with this. Okay. I don't know if I like any of these choices, but environmentally friendly solutions, I'm fine with that. If that's something that can help fight pollution and help avoid climate change catastrophe, which is also, in my opinion, inevitable. It's something that our children and grandchildren are going to have to worry about more than we are. But all right, I'll put somewhat on that one. Science issues. Should the government require children to be vaccinated for preventable diseases? I think yes, but there should be exceptions. And I do think this should be a local thing. Not too local though, but yeah, it's because you know how this works. I feel like there has to be compromise at some point. I think the compromise is that with the exceptions for those whose religious beliefs forbid use of vaccines. And this is it's less important to me. It's not that it's not important, but do you support the use of nuclear energy? I do, but let's see the other stances. No, I'm just going to put. Okay, yes, temporarily, while we increase investment into cleaner renewable alternatives. And I will say this is more important. Should producers be required to label genetically engineered foods? I used to be on the opposite side of this. I've changed my mind in recent years. I think no. I do think that they are a promising solution to end world hunger. Doesn't mean we can't be worried. We have selectively bred crops for thousands of years, and labeling just adds an unfounded stigma to the science. Yeah. See, I changed my mind on this issue. If you would have asked me the same question 3 or 4 years ago, I would have said, yes, consumers have a right to know what's in their food. But again, this is maybe something that government should not step into. Like there's, for example, there's already private organizations that are filling in the void for this, to making sure that consumers have a right to know. So I think it's, labeling by the government does have this unfounded stigma to the science. This is less important to me. Education. Should critical race theory be, oh my gosh, they added this one. Should critical race theory be taught in K-12 education? Oh my gosh, this is so bad that this is on here. I want to put this question as no longer relevant and should be removed. And this is least important. Do you support increasing taxes for the rich in order to reduce interest rates for student loans? Well, it depends on what type of tax. We've talked about this from the other quizzes I took. Oh, okay. Well, I don't know if I like these other stances. So I will say add a wealth tax or capital gains tax in order to reduce interest rates for student loans. All right, somewhat important. Should the federal government pay for tuition at four-year colleges and universities? I think no, but at this point, but I think there needs to be something done to lower the cost because it is out of control. So more grants, maybe a good compromise of junior colleges being the tuition covered for that by the government. So yeah, I'll put yes, but only for partial tuition. And this issue is now student loan debt is a huge crisis right now. I don't think people understand. Like, if you don't have student loan debt, be very thankful. Um, it's been something that has, I know my entire generation overall has really struggled with it. If you look at the average millennial that's my age, 40 years old, compared to a baby boomer who was 40 years old, however many years ago, we are way worse off. And a big reason why is because of student loan debt. So this is probably more important. All right, electoral issues. Should the Electoral College be abolished? Yes. What are the other stances? Oh, yes, and switch to a ranked voting system. Well, I like star voting better than ranked choice voting. Yes, and switch to a representative democracy, popular vote. Okay. No, but the balance of votes by population should be updated. Okay. Oh, this is a good compromise. No, but reform so that votes are distributed proportionally instead of the current winner takes all system. I would be totally for that. Let's do that. Now, this is very important, probably most important to me, voting reforms. Should foreigners currently residing in the United States have the right to vote? Okay. Here we go. So maybe like after a trial period, anyone who pays taxes should have a right to vote. That's a compelling argument, but I think it's not palatable for most Americans. I don't think. Oh, local elections, interesting. That's an interesting compromise too. I would go with either after 5 years or only in local elections. Yeah, I like the local elections though because that's more of an impact on them anyway. That's interesting. I never even heard that as an alternative. All right, should a photo ID be well? Then that could. I am. The more I think about it, that could backfire because if you have a lot of immigrants that move to one specific community. All right, we'll go with 5 years. Sorry. Should a photo ID be required to vote? If it's a national voting ID that's free to everyone, then I would be okay with that. But other than that, I'm skeptical of that. And yes, there is little evidence that voter fraud exists at a widespread level. It's like it basically nil in terms of like tens of millions of ballots. There's just a handful of cases of voter fraud. So if you think that voter fraud is a major problem, you need to get out of your bubble, do a little bit more research. I'm going to add my own stance and say a national voter ID paid for by the federal government. That can't cost that much, and it's mailed to you. I think that's actually the compromise. All right. Should the government increase or decrease military spending? Well, decrease, obviously. Decrease, okay. And this is most important to me. Should the U.S. accept refugees from Syria? Okay. Oh, it has a number, 10,000 refugees. Okay, that's interesting. But only accept families, no single Muslim men. Oh, okay. Yes, but only after extensive. I mean, refugees. It's a different category. I mean, I get after extensive background checks and continuous. That seems like a lot of resources dedicated to that. I'm just going to put yes because I don't like any of those other answers that much. Somewhat. Should foreign terrorism suspects be given constitutional rights? Other stances. Yeah, they deserve a trial, just like U.S. citizens. I do think Guantanamo Bay should be shut down, by the way. It's pretty messed up when you look at like the people who are there now, never given a trial. I don't care if they're not American citizens. I don't care. If we're gonna spread democracy around the world, I think we should spread our judicial system around the world. That's more important, and we should show that we lead by example on that. Yeah, let's go with that one. And I'll put somewhat important. Environmental issues. Looks like we're almost done with this one. Should the government increase environmental regulations to prevent climate change? Yeah, I was okay with the carbon tax. Oh, it's there. Okay. Yeah, tax carbon emissions instead. They got really close to passing that, by the way, in the 1990s, but that ended after some big oil lobbyists got to politicians. Put somewhat on here. Should the U.S. withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement? I think, I understand why people are upset with the Paris Climate Agreement because, it's like should the United States be doing all this when other countries aren't doing as much? And why are we like, how do we know that other countries will follow through, stuff like that? I understand, but I do think that we should still stick with it, though. Someone important. Should drilling be allowed in the Alaska Wildlife Refuge? I mean, it's a refuge. Maybe in case of an extreme emergency. But okay, well, yes, but with very strict environmental regulations. Is that possible? I mean, if that's possible, then I might be okay with it. I mean, it's a wildlife refuge. If you can do it without hurting the local ecosystem, then I suppose it'd be fine. So, less important to me. Healthcare issues. Should the government require employees of large businesses to be vaccinated from COVID? Generally, no. I was against the Biden administration when they did this. But what are the other stances, though? Oh, yeah. No, I think businesses should require vaccination, but not by government mandate. Should be up to the business. Somewhat. Do you support the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, Obamacare? Uh, parts of it ended up being okay, but it was a law that was written by insurance companies, and it had lots of unintended consequences. We still have major issues with our healthcare system. Healthcare costs since it was passed have still mostly gone up. So let's look at the nuance here. Yes, but a mandatory single payer system would be better. Okay, that's fine. And this is more important to me. Should the federal government increase funding of healthcare for low income individuals? I mean, other stances here. Where's the yes, but I prefer switching to a single payer healthcare system. This is what I told you earlier. So, more important. Immigration issues. Should the U.S. build a wall along the southern border? The wall has not been that successful at actually stopping illegal immigration. Most illegal immigrants, most people that come here from other countries, foreign nationals, they just overstay their visas. That's what they do. And so a wall is mostly symbolic, and it's just too costly, and it's inefficient. It's a waste of money, frankly. You could bring more troops to the border. That would be more effective, I think, especially for smuggling. So let's see what they put here. Okay, no, but increase our military presence along the southern border. I think that's a good compromise. And I'll put somewhat. Should illegal immigrants have access to government subsidized health care? I mean, if they're paying taxes, then yes. If they pay taxes. But I mean, even then, you have to take care of them. And that's just, we have to take care of each other as human beings. I don't care if they're citizens here or not. All right, put somewhat. Should undocumented immigrants be offered in-state tuition rates at public colleges within their residing state? We need to find a way to make them legal. They need to, if they're undocumented, let's make them documented first. So I think there needs to be my own stance here. Yes, as long as they pay taxes and get documented, because they need to be part of this. Like, yeah. So somewhat. Housing issues. Should homeless individuals that have refused available shelter or housing be allowed to sleep or encamp on public property? I think there needs to be a place for them. It shouldn't be a criminal offense. I'm gonna add my own stance. They shouldn't be allowed, no, but provide places they can go. Who provides it? Government. Don't just make it illegal and make it so they're just going to prison. That's not what it's not. You're turning them into criminals for something that a lot of times has nothing to do with, like, it's beyond their control. Somewhat. Local issues. Okay, so I'm going to skip over this this part. Which qualities are most important to you in a candidate? I mean, all of this stuff's pretty good. Leadership is pretty important. Transparency, honesty, integrity, effectiveness, diplomacy. Yeah. All right, show my results. This one took longer than I thought it would. So it's gonna match up with it's gonna match me up to political parties. So I'm curious how it's gonna handle all of my submitted stances that don't fit. Maybe that's gonna throw them off. I don't know. So if you're just joining me, wow, some of you are still here. A lot of you are still here. I've been doing all these political tests. So far, it looks like I'm libertarian left according to the political compass. Uh, liberal according to 8 values. Libertarian, social libertarian on 9 axes. Political typology was just like somebody who's a liberal without a home who hates all the political parties. No thanks. Wow, it put Green Party 80%, Peace and Freedom 78%, Socialist 76%, American Solidarity 73%, Democratic 67, Libertarian 42. That low, huh? Constitution 21, Republican 17%. Wow. I wonder if it just ignored my answers then. It probably ignored my answers. Why is these pop-ups coming? Yeah, this is last time I did this. I actually got the top one was transhumanist was the one I got. That's not even on here. I American Solidarity was not even on. I don't remember that one. Usually libertarian's higher for me. Usually it's like 60 or 70%. So that's interesting. I'm just thinking it ignored a bunch of them on here this time. Yeah, it's looking like the okay, so it really considered like issues that were important to me. And the universal healthcare, I think, was a big thing that got me over to the. Yeah, it's funny because like the libertarian aspect, I generally am sympathetic for, but then when the exception is universal healthcare, and so like libertarian, that's like that took me out of that. But I guess if I had more questions, this would have been more accurate. Oh, Keynesian versus laissez-faire. I'm in the middle. That's interesting. See, again, democratic socialism versus capitalism. It's just they they have them diametrically opposed. Uh, and then also big government versus small government. The GOP, Republican Party, is not the small government party. I'm sorry. Like if you think that, then you don't understand the GOP. Yeah, I'm actually really disappointed with the this test. Maybe I should have answered more questions. It does seem to ignore the ones where I submitted my own response, so that threw it off a bunch too. Uh, okay, look where it has. Here's how you compare to your political parties on the traditional. Is that me? Is that supposed to be me? No, that's the. Oh, that's the Constitution Party. This is oh wow, yeah. There's a Communist Party, huh? On here. I don't know. This has been a very disappointing quiz. Yeah, to say that I'm a green, it's probably because I actually the climate change responses, but I thought when my ballot, um, yeah. See, I could probably easily make the libertarian one go bit up or on this one. Is yeah, disappointing. Okay, well that was been maybe I'm just a socialist now according to ISideWith. That's the first time that the Green Party was so high. Usually, last time I took it, Libertarian. I think Green Party was up there, but then Transhumanist. Does Transhumanist Party not on ISideWith anymore? And it's funny too, because like seeing how you guys saw me working through this quiz, and you saw how it worked. I mean, I'm hoping that at the very least you're realizing that these quizzes are pretty flawed. Yeah, like I'm a pretty big fan of markets overall. So, all right, well then we have one more to do. We've been going almost 3 hours, so I'm actually most excited to do this one because I had never even heard of it. It's called the 10 groups, and it's, again, the best quizzes by far have been the 8 values and the 9 axes. The political compass, in my opinion, did a better job than the ISideWith. The political typology quiz also sucked quite a bit. Okay. So let's share the screen. ISideWith is one of the worst political tests. Why did I have my students take that? And how you doing, Zachary, by the way? That's a Patreon supporter. Okay, well, Sapley values. Okay, this last one, 10 groups, is based off of Sapley values and 8 values. So let me share the screen. We'll end with the best one, hopefully. I have a good feeling about this last one. It's called 10 groups. You can kind of see that there is a political compass test that examines one's political beliefs on a variety. They misspelled verity of coordinate charts. The test is based on different parts from Sapley values and 8 values. You will be presented by a statement, and then you will answer with your opinion on the statement from strongly agree to strongly disagree. So very similar to 8 values and 9 axes. With each answer slightly affecting your scores at the end of the quiz, your answers will be displayed on a political compass. 83. 10 categories are regular. This category evaluates one's personal beliefs with a great general estimation with a left-right axis and a authoritarian libertarian axis. Economic. This category evaluates one's economic beliefs with a socialist capitalist axis and a planned laissez-faire. Ooh, interesting. Okay, I like that. The x-axis evaluates a person's preferred economic system, while the y-axis evaluates how much the government intervenes. Oh, I like it. Governmental, diplomatic, societal, technological, law, cultural, procedural, political. You can read all these on your own. I like how you can email them if you don't like your scores. All tests are biased. Okay. Interesting. Okay, let's go ahead and start. You'll be presented with a series of statements for each one. Click the button with your opinion on it. Note that the shorter version is less accurate. Okay. I'm going to do the detailed version, and I'm going to shuffle it. 153. Okay, let's go as quickly as we can, though, for Lakatanke. Paying workers with food is preferable than paying with money. No, disagree. All authority should be questioned. Strongly agree. I like how they have agree, partially agree, and strongly agree. There's more choices here. If the Electoral College exists at all, electoral votes need to be adjusted so that the different states, regions get representation. Strongly agree. Unusual cases cannot be decided with written law. Oh, so they have to go to the courts. Yeah, I agree. Some cultures are inherently superior to other cultures. This is similar to the one from another test. Disagree. Actually, they have partially disagree, because I remember I brought up the cannibalism example. So partially disagree. The harder you work, the more you progress up the social ladder. Partially agree. Technology that improves mental and physical capability shouldn't be used in any political system. I'm not quite sure what that one means, so I'll put neutral on that one. We should embrace modern technology rather than avoiding it. I partially agree on that, yeah. Most things can only be accomplished through a group. Yeah, partially agree on that. Race and ethnicity should be unimportant for everyone. I mean, in a perfect world, yeah. Agree. Only allowing scientific experts to run for an election is preferable than that of a regular democracy. Okay. Scientific experts, what do you mean by that? Really, that's kind of a red flag for me. So I think I partially disagree on that. A global nation where all countries are united will be beneficial to humanity. Yeah, I agree. Inheritance is a legitimate form of wealth. That's straight from, I believe, the either 8 values or 9 axes. Now I can choose either agree or partially agree. I'll do partially agree. If I were to support international organizations at all, I will only support international organizations that align with my political beliefs. I mean, it's not so simple as that, is it? I'll put neutral on that one. Genetic modification of humans is beneficial. Of humans, not plants, huh? We're just upping it up. We're taking it up a notch, are we? Okay. So, okay, I'm assuming this has to deal with like CRISPR and stuff like this. I mean, yeah. We have to be careful with this, though. So I'm going to put partially agree. Political leaders should change the system as little as possible during their term. It depends, doesn't it? It really depends on the situation. So neutral. Changing the status quo using violent methods is mostly unhelpful. Mostly, yes, agree. Now, there are exceptions, but see how they worded it differently, which is proof that I already like this test better than the other ones. Democracy increases the risks of instability and corruption. It can. It certainly can. We'll do partially agree. My political beliefs are very different from the current status quo. Honestly, in some ways, they're not at all. In some ways, they are. Like, I want all drugs legalized. And the status quo is against universal health care. And the status quo is pro minimum wage, which I'm against. So it's back and forth on that. So neutral, I guess. I support the LGBT community. Well, yeah, agree. Most corporations should be state-owned. No, I don't think that should be the case. That would be bad, actually. Disagree. It's a good thing that nationalism is on the rise. No, disagree with that. Politics is boring to me. What do you think, everyone? Is politics boring to me, huh? What do you think? Strongly disagree. Idealists are mostly unrealistic. I mean, they can be. Neutral. Pacifism is generally unrealistic when protesting a government. Oh, look at what Gandhi did now. Look at what Martin Luther King Jr. did. Okay, come on. Partially disagree. Being self-sufficient as a person is a positive trait. Partially agree. Yeah. Private organizations and corporations cannot be trusted and thus need regulated by the government. Not always, but I mean, you don't need to make it sound like always. Cannot be trusted. They can be trusted. So I'm going to be neutral on this one. My ideology should be established as quick as possible. Well, I don't think you should have an ideology, period. So disagree. Strength and substantial authority is required for successful and efficient government. Sure. I partially agree. Reform should happen gradually and slowly. Not always. They don't always have to be. I mean, yeah, I partially disagree with that. Compromising with a Z there. That's interesting. Can avoid unnecessary conflict. I agree. Borders around the world should be less strict. I agree. Partially agree. There's exceptions. Rapid change. I like how the partially is there because that acknowledges that there can be exceptions. Rapid change often leads to the worsening of people's lives. What can sometimes, but other times not. I'll go neutral on that one. A regulated economy is more unfair for the people when compared to a laissez-faire economy. Um, Sometimes, usually no. You usually want a regulated economy, and it usually is more. But then you could also think about like a heavily regulated economy. So I'll put neutral. We should judge an action based on its consequences. I mean, yeah, I partially agree. A person cannot be moral without a religion or belief. Disagree. If taxation exists, churches should be taxed the same way other institutions are taxed. I agree. So some of these I explained earlier. My nation's interest should be considered more important than that of other nations. Well, a lot of times you need in order for your nation's interest to be considered important, you have to consider other nations' interests. So I disagree, or partially disagree. I support regional unions like the European Union. It's the same one from the 8 Values and 9 Axes. I agree, in particular for free trade. In the current system, it is necessary for the government to intervene in the economy to protect consumers. Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, so partially agree. Tradition is vital for society. I don't think the other ones use that word vital, or did they use the word important? I don't know. But I think I put neutral. I mean, yeah, because they can be. My political values should be spread as much as possible. Neutral on that. Monoculturalism is disastrous for society. So monoculturalism is essentially like making it so there's just one dominant culture. Everybody assimilates to that culture. I don't think it's disastrous. I just think that I'm more neutral on that. The existence of the state is a violation of our liberty and rights. I mean, we need a state. We're not ready. It's too utopian to think that we can have anarchy. So partially disagree, even though I get what you're saying philosophically. An autocracy is autocratic system was more beneficial than any democratic system. Strongly disagree. All reform should happen without violence. I mean, I brought this up earlier. There might be instances where you need to have self-defense, so partially disagree. Earlier in the other test, I had to put disagree, though, so I'm glad there's that distinction. Getting past physical limitations through technology would be beneficial to mankind. Agree. Punishment should be valued more than that of rehabilitation. Disagree. A transitional state should be made. I'm not sure what they mean by that, so I will put unsure. A global organization that is generally beneficial should hold a substantial amount of power. What do you mean by substantial? Maybe this is a reference to the United Nations. I'm going to say partially agree. If a person has nothing to hide, that person has nothing to fear. Disagree. It's sometimes moral to crush a revolution or protest by force. That's a tough one sometimes. I'm going to say either partially disagree or neutral, but I partially disagree. My political ideals can be achieved within 10 years. I don't know. If a certain group has a very strong group identity, an independence referendum should be held. It shouldn't just be based on identity. Disagree. The means of production should belong to the workers. Okay. So, as I said earlier, when I was taking one of these other quizzes, I think at the local level, in some instances, I think that it is feasible and it could work. So, I will say partially agree. Multiculturalism is unrealistic. What do you mean it's unrealistic? It can work fine. Conflict is a problem, but overall, it's more about values that are separate from culture. I think that can bring cultures together. I don't know. Partially disagree. Jury nullification should be legal. So when they say jury nullification, I think this. Make sure they are. The term that I'm thinking of here is A jury returns a verdict of not guilty despite its belief. Yeah. So, despite its belief that the defendant is guilty of the violation charged. So the jury, in effect, nullifies a law that it believes is either immoral or wrongly applied. Okay. Yeah. No, I think that's fine. Yeah. I'm not going to have a strong. I think partially agree. Government should stay out of people's daily lives. Agree. Freedom of business is the best practical way a society can prosper. I think generally, yeah. I'll put partially agree on that one. Whether or not the state is democratic, it is still oppressive. It can be, for sure. I'll put neutral on that one. A free economy is the best tool for establishing wages and the price of labor. If it's truly free, yes. So yeah, we'll partially agree. Taxation for the rich should be lowered or even abolished. How we do it is important. Like I actually think corporate taxes should be low, if maybe even as almost zero. But as I said earlier, I'm for wealth tax. I'm for capital gains tax. So disagree. People should be treated equally regardless of their groups and characteristics. I agree. Cultures should learn from each other's to make progress quicker and easier. Yeah, partially agree. All countries should solve its internal issues before focusing on external issues. Partially agree. I've explained that earlier in a different quiz. Hierarchies will inevitably be formed in every society at any time. That's not for sure. I mean, that's a bit too much of a. I don't know. I think that we've seen exceptions throughout human history to this, so partially disagree. Economic inequality is still a very serious problem. I would add that extreme economic inequality is still a very serious problem. Economic inequality is inevitable, as I said earlier, but so I'll say partially agree. If a decision cannot be made in courts, relevant cases in the past should be referenced. Yeah, partially agree. I agree. I'll go agree on that one. The sacrifice of some civil liberties is necessary to protect us from acts of terrorism. Partially disagree. Everybody deserves a second chance. Depends on what it is, so partially agree. Transhumanism is not required in any country within the next 50 years. Well, I mean, there's different definitions of transhumanism. I'm going to be neutral on that. Liberal democracy is the least worst system for leadership. I was going to say that's a good way to put it. Partially agree. Compromises should be made in order to suit the needs of most people. Agree. Communism is an ideology that would never work in practice. Never. That's a strong word. I think it could work someday, in some way, somehow. So I don't know. I'm going to go unsure on that one. Religion is mostly fictional. It depends on what religion, right? Do you have the right one? Neutral. Intention is more important than consequence when judging an action. This is also one that we had on another quiz. I remember this one. What did I put? It's not more important, I think. Yeah. Did we have this question or we had something similar? I partially disagree. If artificial intelligence can rule better than humans, then they should rule. I'm not so sure about that. We don't know enough about it, so partially disagree. Nearly all politicians are evil and problematic, no matter what their political ideals are. I wouldn't say evil. Problematic, maybe, because when you are in a position of power, then human beings tend to, it's a well-known cliche at this point. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, as they say. But I mean, yeah, I partially disagree because that's just to say evil, no matter what their political ideals are. That's a bit much. Society was better many years ago than it is today. I would say, in some ways, maybe. Most ways, no. So partially disagree. If a law system exists, lawmakers and legal experts should hold more influence than judges. I don't know about legal experts so much, but I guess they should influence lawmakers. Yeah, I partially agree. Technology. So I do think that the legislative branch should be the most important branch of government. It is the most important branch, or it's supposed to be in the United States, by the way. Technology is negatively affecting modern society. I mean, in some ways it is, but in most ways it's not. So I would say partially disagree. Wait, did I say? Yeah, partially disagree. Each nation should govern itself with minimal or no foreign intervention. Yeah, partially agree with that. The current mainstream societal attitudes are problematic. Um, Again, that's too broad of a statement, so neutral. Traditional medicines are often more effective than modern medicines. A handful are, but not often more. So partially disagree. Roads and transportation should be public. By the way, I'm not like for pseudoscientific crap, but generally, I'm just saying like more like nutrition based. Okay, roads and transportation should be publicly owned. This is similar from another quiz earlier. I guess there should be exceptions, so we'll put partially agree. The police was not made to protect the people, but to uphold the status quo by force. I mean, that's not. Partially disagree. Politics is very important for society and shouldn't be ignored. I agree. Yeah, I teach this stuff. I teach political history. I agree. The Industrial Revolution and its consequences have been a disaster for the human race. Not a complete no. There's been a lot of good that has come from it. So partially disagree. Taxing citizens using involuntary methods can be considered an act of theft or aggression. Misspelled aggression there. Partially agree. I mean, technically, yeah. Transhumanism will be inevitable. There's a lot of transhumanism references in this one. Neutral on that. It's important that we put aside our differences and cooperate as a single community. Partially agree. Adopting radical ideas isn't possible unless compromises are made. Not necessarily. Neutral on that. Societal progress is heading in the right direction. I think a lot of times it is 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but I would partially agree. Violence is not acceptable when protesting a government. This is the same question from earlier, maybe even a similar one in this quiz. I would say, again, there's always that exception. So partially disagree. I support capital punishment. Disagree. I support the Black Lives Matter organization. I would say mostly, partially agree. I consider abortion as a form of murder. Murder is that word. I mean, I was partially disagree with that. I don't know. Maybe neutral. Any drug that should be legal as long as other people don't have to take. Any drug should be legal as long as other people don't have to take the consequences. That's an interesting word. That's an interesting way they worded it. I don't know if I've ever heard it worded that way, but I'll say agree. I know I'm a radical. Modernity, and social progress has led to a decrease of happiness and often lacks meaning. I'm not. That's too cynical. Partially disagree on that. We should be more optimistic towards a variety of different ideas. I agree. Any action that does not impose aggression. Maybe they misspelled aggression again. Maybe this is just a British thing. Any action that does not impose aggression on any person should not be considered a criminal offense. That's too broad. That's too oversimplified. I don't know. I'm ambivalent on that one. If the current career system is being used, a person's personal and work life should stay separate. Why is this even on here? Not sure about that one. Countries with authoritarian governments should be denounced. Partially agree with that. Yeah. But, you got to be pragmatic and realistic here. You still got to trade with them and try to influence them. So when we say denounce, I mean, it kind of implies that we just blow them off completely, like, eh. So I guess I'll probably partially disagree on that one. Oppression by corporations is a huge concern. Yeah, partially agree. Genetic modification of food can avoid effects from droughts and floods. Agree. The current political system in my nation is flawed. Agree, especially with voting the way we vote in this country. Martial law is appropriate if a nation is undergoing a crisis. Well, define crisis. So I don't know about that. Well, what is the crisis? Many problems in society are often solved quickly and easily by a large government. No, partially disagree. It's a waste of time trying to rehabilitate some criminals. Disagree. Without state intervention, monopolies would violate human rights. Partially agree. Evolution is a fact. Agree. If wages exist at all, the minimum wage should be lowered or stagnated or even abolished. Agree. Capitalism is the most practical and realistic economic system yet. Agree. The risk of transhumanism overweighs the benefits. Again, there's a transhumanism specific reference there. That's interesting. Well, unsure about that. A real rehabilitative system is unjust. No, disagree with that. My nation is great. I think it's great. Yeah, agree. Conflict should be avoided as much as possible. I agree. Violent action should be made to countries that violate basic human rights. You saying we should go to war with these countries? So we should go to war with China for their concentration camps, their prison camps of the Uyghurs? Should we do that? No, I disagree. Different countries and cultures have different preferences for the type of government. Yeah, agree. These are getting easier. If we accept migrants into our borders, the migrants should be expected to assimilate into our culture. I mean, they're going to assimilate whether they want to or not. Should be expected. I mean, I don't like, again, that word should pretty. So, partially disagree. Any well-functioning society requires a hierarchy. Oh, there's that same one. Disagree. Military spending is a waste of money. It can be, but that's too broad. Neutral. My nation should be more diverse. Diversity can be strength, but it doesn't mean that we should be more diverse. I'll say partially agree. It's generally a positive thing, I would say. We should not ignore ideologies that seem radical, but has a chance of success. Partially agree. If the cause is justified in my political ideology and peaceful reform does not work, revolution and aggressive measures should be considered. No, you still should work within the system. Partially disagree. Unless it's extreme. That's why I say partially disagree. Unless it's a desperate situation. Law principles should be codified into a referable system. Referable system. What do they mean by that? I don't know, but I'm going to skip over this one. Government social programs should be replaced with private charities. Not entirely. Complemented. So neutral. We should avoid delaying political reform and change. Yeah. Agree. Politics should be avoided in daily life. Politics can't be avoided in daily life. Anytime you have more than one person in a room, you have politics. So I disagree. Violence and revolutions, I like how they capitalize revolutions, are required in order to establish my ideology. Disagree. From each according to his ability to each according to his need. Oh my goodness, neutral. It's everywhere, isn't it? My ideology is sometimes considered extreme. Usually not. So disagree. Usage of genetic modification for animals and plants should be minimized. Mostly disagree. Let's disagree. Even though equal opportunities can lead to equal outcomes, society should still focus on equal opportunities, not equal outcomes. Yes, and I would say 95% of people agree with that. Maybe even 99% of people agree with that. I mean, anytime you hear someone's arguing against people that are for equal outcomes, they're usually arguing against a straw man. Automation is very beneficial for society. It can be. Partially agree. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Partially disagree. A beneficial democracy requires high levels of education. Partially agree. Actually agree. Yeah. Victimless crimes should not be considered crimes. Agree. Globalization is inevitable. Agree. National sovereignty is important. Very important. Agree. Environmental activism and social pressure are a more effective way of saving the environment when compared to government action. They can be, but government seems to have the best resources to do this. So I'll say partially agree. The justice system should be partially privatized or even fully. No, strongly disagree. People are overly worrying about physical human modifications nowadays. I'm ambivalent about that one. A equal system of equal outcomes should be established. Disagree. Traditions are of no value on their own. I don't like the way this is worded. Go neutral. Thinking in the long term is more important than thinking in the short term. Yeah, agree. The market regulates itself. Unjust monopolies will not survive in a free market. Disagree. The market should be able to provide a majority of healthcare services. I mean, again, that's utopian, and I still think that healthcare is a right, not a privilege. So, partially disagree. Court should reference to other judicial decisions. Agree. We got 3 more. If judges and legislators exist, judges should hold more power than legislators. No, disagree. Legislators should have more power. It's important that we maintain our culture and tradition. I mean, not sometimes, or maybe most of the time, not always. Partially disagree. And action should be seen as right or wrong through a set of rules and principles. Okay, well, I mean, that's again too vague. That's too broad. Neutral. Last question. When a threat arrives, some liberties should be sacrificed in order to maintain stability and prosperity. Okay. Yeah, partially agree. All right. I'm a dirty centrist. I knew it. There you have it, folks. Although I do think this is the best political quiz I've ever taken. The next match is radical centrism, apoliticism, others. It says centrism is a political position that supports a balance between left-leaning and right-leaning policies. This option could also show up if there isn't an ideology for your results. Please fill in the form if this is the case. So it has me in the middle for all these. The one that's out of the middle, the first one that's out of the middle is for I'm more of a reformist progressive instead of a conservative progressive. I'm more of a rehabilitation-based common law versus punishment-based common law. It looks like I'm transitional compromisation. So I'm more about transitional compromise. I'm also more about politicized moderatism. Wow, these are all new terms. I'm going to have to do some more research on here. But overall, it looks like, okay, and then here's all the spectrums. Wow. So I'm more capitalism than socialism a little bit. More planned than free, surprisingly. Well, that's about 50-50 almost. A little bit more planned than free. More libertarian than authoritarian. That's been the consistent for all these, especially with the 8 values and non-axes. Autocracy. Yeah. Whoa. About 50-50. No, a little bit more autocracy on this one. That's interesting. More globalism than nationalism. No surprise. More particular versus universal. So that's more localism. Progress over tradition, reform over conserve, accelerate over decelerate. Okay. More transhumanist over primitivism, common law over civil law. That's an interesting one. Rehabilitative over punitive. So that's in terms of justice system. More equality over hierarchy. multicultural over monocultural, compromise over persist, transitional over direct, moderate radical 50-50, politicized apolitical 50-50, more individualism versus collectivism, more peaceful over revolution, more idealism over realism, and more deontological. Don't even know what that word means. Deontological ethics. In moral philosophy, deontological ethics or deontology is the normative ethical theory that the morality of an action should be based on whether that action itself is a right or wrong under a series of rules rather than based on the consequences of the action. Okay, so that's also related to the justice system, and that's interesting. That's a new. I got a heat map here. So it seems like I'm right there in the middle, folks. I'm grilling it up. Okay, so I do think this last one was the most accurate. This is the one I probably would share I would be most comfortable with. I'll tell you the political typology and ISideWith gave me kind of weird vibes. I think were pretty bad, actually. So no wonder no one knows what I am because of these crappy political quizzes. So I encourage you all to take these. I'm going to put links to all of them in the description after I publish this. I'm going to bed here soon, though, but I just want to wrap things up and just say, hey, I hope you realize that it's complicated, that my political beliefs are a bit all over the place. In general, I've found lately that I've been pretty skeptical of government action on anything, but there are certain things where I don't compromise in terms of I do want the government to step in. I still lean towards capitalism generally, although I do believe that certain things should be classified as public goods and services in the common interest. I would reckon that the vast majority of you watching probably agreed with me on most of these things. And what I want you to think about is like maybe if you perceived me as someone as a radical, maybe your perception has changed. Maybe these labels do more harm than good, and maybe we should just stop using them. At the very least, when we talk about political issues, if we want to avoid these arguments with our families and just, social media back and forth, I think it's better to stop bringing up politicians and rallying around a politician or a political party. Stop being so tribal and partisans. Don't be a partisan hack. We should be having conversations about policies and issues. And I think that's where we're going to have progress. So, yeah, labels can be a very terrible, terrible thing. Got a Henry Wallace fan here. Well, I can't believe all of you watched all that, but hey, you all know where I stand politically as of now, May 1st, 2022, and that could change. My political beliefs continue to change. They continue to evolve. I had a pretty conservative upbringing, I like to think of. Some of those values will never probably leave. I, for the most part, have the same values as I did growing up. But most of my family, especially extended family, is they would call themselves conservative. Although I bet if they took these quizzes, they probably won't be as conservative as they think. All right. Well, thanks for watching. And I still think Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. So there's that, at least. We can all agree on that.